Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another MAMG Let's Play of Root Double. So depending on when you're watching this video, if you're watching these videos as I'm posting them, this is going to seem out of sequence. Once you're on the playlist and going through, I think it'll make a little bit more sense. But today we're doing a bonus video, which I know it's the only video going up for today, but I'm calling it that because I'm trying to wrap up some loose ends. So before, I tried to get the good ending and was not able to do so because I thought there was an option that wasn't available until the before scenario has been completed. That is true, but you guys have been very helpful in getting me to understand how all of this works. So basically it comes down to wasting time. And there's many different ways that you can waste time, and that option that doesn't appear counts as 2 points against time wasting. But as long as you don't waste more than those 2 points of time, you'll still get the good ending. So that's what I'm gonna try and do this time, is get the good ending and also see a additional sequence that apparently is in the after credit scene or the credit sequence that I skipped over because of copyright claim stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can edit that in a certain way so that everybody can see the sequence, so stuff will make sense when everything comes together, I guess. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like I do. And then additionally, we're gonna go through all of the tips and all of the things that I haven't read any of because, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Where was it? I thought it was, oh, it's right click, my bad. I thought it was escape. But there's all these tips here that I haven't even looked at. So we're gonna go through all this stuff because it's got some pretty good information in it. And I'm going to be using a guide from start to finish to get the good ending because I thought I did before, but I think when I was doing stuff with Jun, I kind of took my own decision making at hand instead of using the guide, which made me waste more time. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna choose Moribe and Enna at 4 and Tachibana at 7, if I remember right. Let me double check because I don't want to ruin it. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and I thought I hit skip before to test and make sure this worked, and it stopped like when the stuff was happening. But when I recorded this intro earlier and I hit skip, it skipped the entire sequence, so maybe because I'd seen it before. So we're gonna go a little bit into overlapping territory, but we'll get there. I'm sure we will. I promise. Watase mulled over the situation once he heard Kazami's reasoning. Then how should we split up the teams? He then quickly came to a conclusion.
Tachibana, Osan, 俺と組まないか?
Yep.
ああ、別に構わないよ.
Though he didn't let it show on his face, Watase was relieved to hear that. Ukita is dangerous. It seemed he currently viewed Watase as someone not to be trusted, but there was no guarantee he wouldn't shift his hostility to others. It just feels too dangerous to let Moribe and Teach team up with him. Though Jun was a rescue worker, she was still very young and a bit mentally unstable in some ways. Oh, we know. And Enna was just a civilian. Due to that, he reasoned that he and Kazami combined would have no trouble dealing with Ukita if he were to cause any trouble. Kazami gave Watase a slight nod. Perhaps she'd figured out what he was thinking.
了解です。では、捜索ルートは
Kazami took out her PDA and began explaining.
我々が
This
現
is where
在
it
いるのは
stopped before,
第5エリアになりますから、
so just
第
in
4エ
case
リ
we
ア
have a
方面
different
に
route,
進むチームと第6エリア方面に進むチームに分かれましょう。
I want to cover it again.
じゃあ合流地点は?
我々もすれ違う可能性がありますから、ここでいいのではないですか。ぐるっと回ってなお要救助者に出会えなかったら再度出発すればいいと思います。不測の事態が起きたり1時間経っても何の成果も上げられなかった時も一旦ここに戻ることにしましょう。
だな。ならはぐれる心配もない。
AD はどうする？これ全部持ってく？
Oh, the AD. Jun was talking about the 30 AD they just found.
いや、なるべく置いていこう。何かあって破損でもしたら本当にやばいし。それにひょっとしたら彼らがここに来るかもしれん。そうすれば少なくとも彼らの手に渡る。
では我々はひとまず2時間分1人当たり2本持っていきましょう。
Yes, that's the same as before. Kazami said that, then gave the rest of the group 2 AD for each member.
じゃあついでにこんなのはどうかしら。
Is she gonna write her note? Yeah, okay, so I think from here, it's the same. Like, she's gonna write the note, we're gonna split off. And yeah, all this, I believe, is the same, and then it came to here. And looking at this is going to waste time. So let me save, because I definitely want to make sure that I don't mess anything up. And again, I'm sorry if I skipped over something when I was testing this, but I think this is as far as I got, so we should be good. If this seems weird that they're all at this ceiling thing, I think we did this before though, but my mind is just melting right now, so I'm just trying to focus on what I need to do to get the good ending. So just hang tight. All right, let's see. So Kazami is at 4. Is that 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, seems a little out there, but that's all right.
続いていないでしょう。この手の割れ目などはすでに私と森部で散々調べましたし、それにもし地上まで達するような穴があったら、塔に司令長たちが突入してきているはずです。
She's right. Kazami's words made sense.
まあこんなところに都合よく脱出口があるわけないよな。
残念ながら以前にも申し上げましたが、脱出口がありそうな場所はすべて私と森部がすでに調べました。天井、エアダクト、エレベーターシャフト、非常階段、すべてあの交番に囲まれていて隙間もありません。まだ見落としがあるかもしれませんが、とりあえず要救助者等の捜索を優先しましょう。
だな。じゃあ第3エリアに進むか。
Alright, skipping forward. Oh, Watase's body froze when he thought of that ghastly spectacle. Alright, what do we got? We got Kazami at a 7. Ooh. Gotta keep in line with the waifu. But he did his best to hide his fear and spoke
ちょっと
up.
待っていてくれ。隊長さん、どうするつもりだね。いないとは思うが、一応な。
Just then, he thought he saw Kazami's shoulders tremble slightly. Okay, this is gonna, yeah, we're gonna check the body room. I remember. Okay, so next is here?
わかった。
Yep, all right. Watase is at a 7. Okay. These look like the same choices I made before, though. But I guess last time I was with Jun, wasn't I? So it's already different. Once you confirm Bukto is now outside the stairwell, Watase descended the staircase with Kazami. No, I don't want her to get hurt. Aww. Don't like it. Okay, Kazami 7. Yep, still keeping the waifu safe. I love this moment though. When they're together, it's so sweet. Like, I don't know if I want them to get back together. That's the thing. It's like, I know they had hardships and they're both so focused on work, even though Watase isn't now. And probably when I finish the series, I'm gonna have completely different opinions. But I really, really want her to be happy. 4, okay. I don't know why it's 4, but we're going 4. But Watase couldn't lie.
すまん。本当に何も思い出せないんだ。
そうですか。
I think we did that before too, yeah. We told her the truth. I just love the fact that they used to be together. They're so cute! Okay, where am I going? Where am I going? Did medical care, so the next one should be here? We got a minute. This is probably very jarring for people who don't know what's going on. Okay, so for here we want Enna to be at a 4. Right? It feels like I'm doubling up. I don't know what's gonna be different. I really, really don't. Okay, bomb and gun, it's open, Enna at a 7. Whenever that happens, okay, so we're gonna put Enna at a 7. Wait, is that 7? Yeah, that's 7. I was like, is that 7 or 10? But this doesn't go up to 10. Okay, and then we explode. And then here it wants me to save. I don't know if I really need to, but I will. Okay, so here it says to save, and I don't know. Oh, that's a bad ending 9. Okay, so I don't want that. Okay. Because it says keep the save, you'll get back to it later. See, I'm just trying to do what the guide says. Okie dokie. So I guess up until this point, I don't have to redo it? Because, yeah, okay. I think I'm doing this right. So n out of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems high. Am I misreading this? Is that what's happening? Is 1 0 or... I hope I'm not doing it wrong. I hope I'm not doing it wrong. Okay. Watase felt the shivers, so now they're all at 4. I think that's right. Okay. Wait, guys. Wait just a sec.
何
What?
隊長。
君に保管させるのはごめんだよ。論外だ。違う、そうじゃない。そんな危険なものを壊すか捨てるかするべきだと言ってるんだ。
Isn't this the same? Yeah. Why did you tell him to wait? Why did... I don't know. Okay, whatever. So we're going here. With lesson, which is n at a 7. Just max out. Okay. So that's the same. And then this one, they're all at a 4? It's so weird to go back to this now. Oh god, so much stuff! So much death! How is this the good one? Well, I mean, that already happened. I guess nobody else has died, right? Okay.
どうしてだって？決まってるさ。AD を持ち去った人がいるんだ。
Did I? Okay, I did that one. Okay, so... June is at a 4.
そうだよ。犯人はきっと私たちの中に。
This doesn't feel like it's good. Unless I'm reading this wrong.
職業倫理と個人的思想は必ず
Okay,
しも一致しない。
work ethics. Okay,
職責よ
so...
り個人の主義主張を貫くことを
444
良しとする者もいる。
I don't know why we agree with them. Like, I don't know how they pop into the equation.
それって。
There we go. Okay, and then... There's supposed to be inconvenient truth, which is here. Okay, not that kind of person. Here, the voice from
今の
inside.
声は立場
Just since she started talking again. Okay, this is...
私は信じない。
Same, but I can't skip it. Okay. What's going on? You could hear the voice behind the door at that... all that well, but it seemed like she was talking to someone.
隊長、ぼーっとしてないで扉を開けてよ。
Okay.
あ
Why does it restrain his confusion and open the door? I'm confused too. Why is that a thing?
待って。
Yeah, because now we're back.
先ほど一瞬地上の誰かとつながって、しかし
Because that means
す
that
ぐ
a
途切れてしまい
7,
ました。
except that, because she's the
切れ
best.
た瞬間、思わず待ってと叫んでしまいましたが。
I'm gonna save again here, just in case. Make sure I don't save over something I'm playing on the other profile, right? Okay, because from
来週
cross-examination,
島からファクトリーまで歩いて6分もかかるわけ
it
よ。
says it wants me to go, what to say 7, page 4. I feel like I'm doubling back on what I've done already. I don't know, guys.
だがそれをあの2名の研究員たちに目撃された。
What to say is at
そ
a
して口封
7.
じのために殺したんだ。
Yeah, this doesn't seem good.
立花。俺はあの堂島という隊員を
Okay, so what to say at a 4. 2, 3, 4. Kazami at a 7 and June at a 7. Okay. What's gonna be different? I don't understand. Wait, cause? But at that moment, Watase suddenly started hurting, and his skin felt numb. It was just like the time he'd been in the contaminated zone. Watase checked his watch. It was past time for them to take AD.
先生 AD を打つんだ
Okay. Watase and Anna frantically injected themselves with their last AD. Watase felt his headache settle down immediately as he did so. The Procyon reading was 5,726 millisieverts.
いよいよ AD なしじゃ生きていけない環境になってきたな
In other words, Watase and the others only had an hour left to
だい
live.
たい考えてみりゃ数値が常に第一危険基準値を超えるようになってから随分経つ AD でも被爆を防げるかどうかわからない線量の中に何時間もいるんだ幻覚が見えるわけだぜ
Watase shuddered, and then quietly spoke up.
確かに。でもね、隊長さん、私少し気になっていることがあるの。
Okay.
あなたは記憶障害を起こした上に汚染区域に入ったから幻覚を見てもおかしくないと言ったわね。でも幻覚の原因が放射線じゃないとしたら
Is this the same? Okay, it is. I was like, did she say this before or did she not? It is really interesting to see since she's the teacher now and we know that. No sooner had Enna said that than Watase felt his anxiety and his heart rapidly spread. What did you say? What did you say? I'll be right back here, so wait. Okay.
いや待て先生それは危険だ
え
あいつらは銃の一件で
Oh, yeah,
先生に対してもかなり疑心を抱いている
We didn't stop her last time. She went to go talk to them and then she got killed. This is different.
今出て行ったら何されるかわからないぞ
でもだったらどうすればいいのよ。こんな状況じゃ
This is different.
AD も要救助者も脱出口も捜索できないでしょ。私がみんなを説得しなきゃどうにもならないじゃない。
The situation did indeed look hopeless. Even if they could persuade Jun and Ukita, that wouldn't change the fact that they didn't have enough AD. Everyone would be exposed to radiation in just another hour. They'd struggled as hard as they could for the last 5 hours, but in the end, now that I think about it, we haven't solved any of our problems. They haven't found the survivors, to say the least of Yuri. Someone with a gun could be hiding down there with them. His once trusted allies now saw him as their
だ
enemy.
が説得ができなくてもみんなが生き延びられる方法があればいい
そりゃそうよ。でもそんなのあると思う？
He didn't. All normal methods were impossible. If there had been any way, then they would have done it ages ago. But what if we've been thinking about this the wrong way the whole time? Is there a method that we haven't thought of yet? If it means running into a danger we've avoided up until now, or putting my own life on the line. If I'm prepared for that, then what's the first method I can do? Words that he had heard a while back replayed themselves in Watase's mind.
どうやら原子炉のある N エリアで今も大規模な火災が続いているらしく、そのためにセキュリティシステムが暴走し外部からアクセスできなくなっているそうなんだ。
A light bulb went off in his head. A wide smile then spontaneously adored his cheeks.
どうしたの？
Watase answered Enna's puzzled question in a subdued voice.
先生思いついたよ全てを解決する方法を
She's with us now.
答えは一番最初に出ていたんだ
Oh my god. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for a good
全員
ending.
を助ける方法を俺はとっくに知っていたんだよ
どういうこと？だったらなんでそれを隠していたのよ。
Because I'm dumb. Watase put his index finger to his lips. Enna went quiet with a start.
あまり大声を上げちゃダメだ森部たちに知られたら終わりだ
本当にそんな方法があるのね。
ああ先生だけには教えてやるちょっと耳を貸してくれ
Enna walked up to Watase in surprise. He then brought his mouth to her ear.
いいか先生その方法ってのは俺が命を捨てるってことだ
And whispered those decisive words. Enna's eyes widened. Watase then slipped behind her and got her in a chokehold. Watase paid no attention to Enna's pained grunts and kept squeezing her neck.
どうして
Yeah, what's happening? What's going on?
教えたら先生俺を止めるだろう。だから悪いけどここで少し眠っていてくれ。
Before long, strength left Enna's body. Watase laid her on the floor.
何をしてるんだ。
He heard the auditory hallucination echo through his head again. It no longer even surprised him. So he paid no heed to it and left the room. Watase destroyed the door opening mechanism located right next to the door once he left the room. This way, Moribe and the old man can't get into the room, and Teach will be safe. The auditory hallucination then returned with a vengeance.
おい答えろ。なぜ先生を気絶させた。
Oh my god, this is so cool!
お前何をしようとしてるんだ。
I really must be a lunatic if I'm actually going to answer an auditory hallucination. Watase laughed bitterly, then answered the hallucination.
森部たちを説得するなんて意味がない。何しろもうあと1時間しかないんだ。だがそれでも皆を助ける方法が一つだけある。
Nani? Watase took a security card out of his pocket. It was the level N card that the dead girl had on her. The only key that would open the door to Area N.
司令長が言っていた N エリアで火災が続いていてそれでセキュリティシステムが暴走している。だったら N エリアの火災を消しさえすればセキュリティシステムの暴走が止まり隔壁も開けられるはず。
Okay.
まさかお前一人で N エリアに行くつもりか。
そのまさかさ。
The melted down nuclear reactor was in Area N. The radiation filling that area was no doubt off the charts compared to what they were faced with out here. But in spite of that, Watase still managed to force a smile. So what? What he truly feared wasn't death. It was powerlessness, to watch everything come to an end, helpless to stop it. With that thought in his mind and his destination set, Watase started walking off. The auditory hallucination then began to shout desperately at him.
やめろバカ、死ぬぞ。燃える原仮に消火できたとしても被爆は免れないんだぞ。
Hang on, let me see what he said. You can't put out the fire of a burning reactor all by yourself, and even if you could, then you'd be exposed. Got it. Okay, that voice had guided Watase many a time up until now, even though he didn't know if it was his ally or his enemy. So when Watase once again heard that voice no one else knew of, he defied it.
すまん。今回ばかりはお前の言うことは聞けない。誰かがやらなきゃダメなんだよ。みんなで5時間以上頑張って今こんなざまなんだから。
そんなに死にたいのか。みんなを助けるためなら死んじまってもいいってのか。
I mean, I've seen what happens if we don't. Everybody dies. The voice was growing louder and angrier. Watase answered it with a wry smile.
お前にはわかんないかな。別に俺は死にたいわけじゃない。ただ皆を助けたいだけなんだよ。
どうしてそうまでして。
This is the second time he's been asked that today.
どうしてそうまでして私を救おうとしたりするんですか。
Oh, Yuri. Watase fondly remembered that question. It was from a time where the group had worked together to find a way to survive. A time before they were overtaken by Discord. Discord? Oh no! Group servers are down! Watase quietly muttered the answer he hadn't given back then.
俺は人を助けることだけをずっと考えてきたんだ。お前に有利を助けろって言われたあの時からな。
Without any memories of the past, these few hours he'd spent here in Labo were Watase's entire life. And the few memories he had recovered had been of Labo too. This dark underground facility was the only world he knew. Maybe he could have made a different choice if he were living peacefully. But Watase had awoken in this facility consumed by radiation, all while bearing the burden of his role as a rescue squad captain.
だから俺は その役目を全うしたいだけなんだよ。火や爆風や煙に追われて無力な自分に腹を立てながらよ、 AD が足りなくなりゃガスの中にも汚染区域にも飛び込んで、誰かが穴に落っこちたら手掴んで引っ張り上げて、
That's right, atta boy.
有利が瓦礫に潰されそうになれば身を挺してかばって、そうして皆を助けることだけをずっと考えてきたんだよ。
The voice went quiet. It wasn't surprising. There was no one out there who could understand Watase's feelings. He was an entity who'd suddenly been born into this hellish environment without any memories. He didn't know who he was, only that he was a spirit bestowed with the sole duty of saving lives. That was him. That was Watase Kasasagi. The wounds he'd gained in the process of fulfilling that duty suddenly began hurting. His burnt left hand, his cracked ribs, the cut on the back of his head. His throat felt like it was on fire from thirst and all the vomiting he'd done, and his body was as heavy as lead from all the exhaustion he'd built up. And yet, he did not stop. For his will was the only thing he could rely on, now that he didn't even trust himself.
俺は俺のせいで誰かが死ぬのは嫌なんだ。俺が行動しなかったせいで全員が命を落とすのも同じことだ。原子炉の火を消すことで皆が救われるならそうしよう。その結果
Even if I lose my life as a result. Perhaps the auditory hallucination had figured out what he was thinking, as if it spoke up in a faint voice.
渡せ。
分かったろ。分かったらもう黙っていてくれ。これ以上話すと決心が鈍りそうだ。
Yeah, also we're spending all our time talking right now. We should be like on our way to Area N. Watase muttered that and broke off into a run. He headed for Area N, home of the burning reactor. Watase's Procyon started beeping louder than he'd ever heard it before when he opened the connecting passageway gate to Area N. The Procyon's display was giving off a reading far greater than anything he'd ever seen before.
12010ミリシーベルト。
He was then assaulted by an intense headache and severe nausea. His skin was numb and his vision grew blurry. Watase turned his Procyon off, then kept on walking. The nuclear reactor's right behind this gate. A melted down reactor, a raging hellfire, and extremely lethal doses of radiation. Watase shuddered as he imagined what hell on earth waited for him right up ahead. But...
覚悟の上だ。
That's right. Watase kept himself from shaking, then pulled a hose out from a nearby fire hydrant. He held it with his left hand, with the security card in his right. Extinguishing preparations all set, let's roll. Though genuine danger lay just up ahead, Watase did not falter. Endless courage was coursing through him. He suddenly broke out into a smile. Looks like I finally become a true rescue worker. He then took the card in his hand and passed out. No. That would be pretty anticlimactic. And opened the gate. At that moment, he felt as if he had stepped into a raging storm. An invisible force broke over his body with earth-shattering power. Yet Watase stood his ground and opened his eyes, then saw what lay on the other side of the gate. Okay, so is this the same? Ah, it is! Yeah, that's still weird, right? A boy guarded in school uniform was lying there. His body was collapsed in a pool of spreading blood. Isn't that Natsuhiko Tenkawa? His name and face matched up perfectly with Watase's memory of him.
大丈夫か。
No, he's not okay. But Natsuhiko didn't respond to his calls. Watase took off his gloves and pressed his index finger against Natsuhiko's carotid... Didn't I mess this word up before too? Or his artery, okay? Yeah. He couldn't feel a pulse and Natsuhiko's body was cold. So we were still too late. Watase frantically laid Natsuhiko flat on the floor and began CPR. Just do it like Tachibana and Moribe did. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Okay. Watase desperately continued to perform CPR while fighting off his headache and convulsions. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 15 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Okay, you're just gonna repeat. Please, don't die. Soon enough, Watase felt a faint pulse. That's different! Watase pressed his hand against Natsuhiko's mouth and felt the boy's breath. But that didn't change the fact that he had 9 fatal wounds. It'd be a miracle if he survived after losing that much blood. But why is he bleeding so bad to begin with? Watase looked over Natsuhiko's body to find there were several small holes and wounds here and there behind his uniform. The sight of them was no longer shocking to Watase after seeing so many of them before. Just then, he noticed something lying next to Natsuhiko. He held the object's heavy weight. He felt the object's heavy weight pass through his arms when he picked it up. It was different from the one Enna had, but it was undoubtedly a pistol. Watase groaned in shock, but at that moment... Oh god, are we gonna... What? What? A mysterious fear flared up in him. The monster looked at him and laughed. At that moment, just as an indescribable fear sent shivers down his spine, he was assaulted by an intense pain akin to his brain being crushed. Oh god, what's happening? Wait, what? The man screamed, faced with an agony unlike anything he had felt ever before. His well-toned body proved helpless in the face of that power. You monster! In spite of that, he struggled against it, attempting to complete his mission nevertheless. His will broke as the overwhelming pain surged through his head once more. He staggered backwards, clutching his head. The monster's face warped sinisterly, its gaze piercing right through him. He then fled without looking back. If he had stood his ground, he'd be killed, annihilated. And so he held his throbbing head as he ran for his life. I have to get away, as far as possible. He had to retreat to a place where the monster's power couldn't reach him. But it was all for naught. What's happening? Everything in front of him flashed as he felt an agony like that of his head exploding. What? Yeah, please explain. It was a memory he had no recollection of. It seemed like it was a memory of just before Watase had lost his memories. And the thing that had scared Watase so much back then was this boy right in front of him? No way. There's no way that's true. Watase shook his head to dismiss that delusion. Anyway, I gotta get him to a safe place. Watase put the pistol in his breast pocket, then lifted Natsuhiko's body up into his arms. But just then, Watase felt a presence behind him. He turned around, then saw it. Someone with a tiny frame was charging straight at him. Yep. And she still got the axe. Okay. So this is still the same. We're still gonna fight. Watase hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should take out the pistol in his breast pocket. No, what am I thinking? I can't hurt someone to protect myself. Just as he thought that, he noticed that Saryu's body was faintly trembling. She was convulsing the same way Watase had been for a while now.
Oi, 君もまさかこの頭痛を感じてるのか? だったらさっさとここから逃げろ。自分の身を危険にさらしてまで俺と戦って何になる?
Saryu suddenly stopped in what appeared to be surprise. Yeah, again, right? Again. Is she gonna... Okay, it doesn't look like she got killed. I was about to take him to the infirmary before you attacked.
彼に危害を加えるつもりなんて俺にはないんだよ。
Saryu then spoke in a near inaudible voice. What? Watase brought his face closer to hers to hear her better.
私でも見抜けるような見えすいた嘘はやめて。
それはどういう
Asadia moved her right hand as fast as lightning before Watase could finish. She poked him in the eyes, temporarily blinding him. Watase felt Sadio slipping her body out from under him at the same time. Crap! I've got to put some distance between us! Watase had no way of dodging any axe swings at this time. You don't kill her! Watase blindly stretched out his hands in the darkness. His left hand came into contact with something. It was the sensation of cloth, a sleeve. Watase grabbed onto it and focused solely on pulling it towards him. Sadia's gasp echoed throughout the darkness. Watase kept clutching onto her with his left hand, while his right hand remained free. I have to defeat her right here and now. Watase's body, spurred on by his ever-growing fear, filled with fierce strength. He reluctantly clenched his hand into a fist so he could knock her unconscious when...
やめろ！彼女を傷つけるな！
Oh! So if Natsuhiko was dead, he wouldn't have been able to stop her. Stop Watase. That makes sense! Oh my god, I love this. The auditory hallucination showed up again. Watase came back to his senses and opened his raised fist. He then slipped behind Sadio and locked her in a chokehold. Sadio struggled. Watase's vision hasn't returned yet. I'm sorry about this. Watase mentally apologized to Sadio as he applied pressure to her thin neck, all while being careful not to squeeze it too hard. All the strength in her body soon faded away. Watase let out a great big sigh once he'd confirmed this, then loosened his grip. His sight soon came back. He could see Sadio was passed out cold in his grip. That was too close. She really did want to kill me. But anyway, what can I do for her now? His head and skin still hurt like hell. His convulsions also hadn't let up. He didn't know why, but his instincts were screaming that it was too dangerous for him to stay here for too long.
二人をここから出してやらなければ。
Watase carried out Natsuhiko and Sadio. They were heavy. Watase's body truly was in poor shape if they felt that way to him. He staggered out of Area N along with Natsuhiko and Sadio. Oh my god, that's so cool! He left through the same door he'd come through, and when he made his way out into the connecting passageway... Hey, Tachibana! He found Kazami standing there.
よかった。ご無事だったんですね。
橘、お前どうしてここに
Watase was cautious of Kazami after what had transpired back in the surveillance room.
それは、体調のことが心配で。
My heart.
それで、監視カメラを見ていたら、隊長が N エリアに入っていくのが見えて。でも、これ、どういうことなんですか
Kazami was looking at Natsuhiko and Sadio with shock.
夏彦とサリュだ。今は気を失っている。
この子たちに何が
Yeah, but Natsuhiko's like bleeding, like a lot.
夏彦は N エリアに倒れていたんだ。サリュはおそらく N エリアに後から入ってきたんだと思う。
N エリアに倒れていたって N エリアには炎上する原子炉があるんじゃ。
Yeah, about that.
いや、俺にも訳がわからないんだが N エリアにはそんなものはなかったんだ。
That revelation left Kazami speechless. But Watase had figured she'd received a hard time believing that. So he handed her his level N card.
橘、聞くより見るのが早い。その目で確認してきてくれ。
Yeah, but be careful because of the radiation and stuff. Kazami nodded dubiously, then took the card and ran towards Area N. About 30 seconds later, Kazami came back quickly and immediately started talking.
信じられません。まさかこんなことが。
Watase nodded as he took the level N card back from her.
俺たちはどうも根本的なところで誰かに騙されていたようだ。
しかもあの機械、おそらく原子炉とは別の何かだと。
Yep. It appeared Kazami also believed that the giant machine in Area N was no reactor. However,
立花、説明や議論は後だ。早いとこ、夏彦を手当てしないとまずい。
Yep. Kazami looked at Natsuhiko and nodded.
出血がひどいようですね。輸血が必要かと思われます。
じゃあ医務室に行こう。あそこには血液パックも輸血キットも揃っていた。
了解しました。一人は私が運びます。
できるか？足の傷が
だいぶ回復しました。なんとかなります。
Kazumi pressed against the wound in her leg and carried Sadyu.
しかし隊長、原子炉がないということは、この施設は一体。
わからん。俺にはもう何もわからん。
Those words came straight from the bottom of Watase's heart. Okay. Watase and Kazumi carried Natsuhiko and Sadyu, respectively, towards Area 4. All the emergency staircases in Area 5 were out of commission, so they decided to get to the infirmary through Area 4.
隊長、道中は気をつけていきましょう。
何かあったのか？
実は N エリアに来る前、森部と浮田さんが監視ルームを飛び出していったのですが、あの二人かなりおかしくなっているよう
Yeah,
な
they're still a little loopy.
おかしくなってるって。
どう説明すればいいのかわかりませんが、とにかく今隊長が彼らと会うのは危険です。
He didn't know the details, but the tone in Kazumi's voice and the look on her face were enough to convince Watase.
わかった。ここからは慎重に行こう。
Watase and Kazumi carefully made their way down the connecting passageway. Fortunately, they made it to the infirmary without encountering anyone else. They then laid the children down on the beds and began treating Natsuhiko immediately. Kazumi used a scanner there to check Natsuhiko's blood type.
出ました。RH プラス O 型です。急性反応もなし。
She then took the type O blood pack out of the refrigerator and quickly set it to the transfusion kit. Finally, she pricked Natsuhiko with the needle, starting the transfusion. While all that was going on, Watase used all the Chiron he had on hand to seal up Natsuhiko's wounds as much as possible.
夏彦の容体はどうなんだ？助かりそうか？
呼吸、脈拍ともに極めて微弱。しかし、バイタルサインはかろうじて安定。予断を許さない状況ではありますが、このまま輸血を続ければなんとかなりそうです。
But like, who shot him? Immense relief washed over Watase.
よかった。
しかし、あくまで応急処置です。一刻も早く病院に連れて行きたいところです。ですが、その前に教えてください。監視ルームを出た後、一体何があったのですか？
実は。
Kazumi stared at Watase with a stern look on her face as the latter recounted the series of events that had led him to this point. He started by telling her about how he'd gone to Area N all by himself to try to put out the fires in order to end the lockdown. He then talked about how there had been no fires there, to say the least of a melted down nuclear reactor. Finally, he mentioned how he found Natsuhiko was attacked by Sadyu right afterwards and then reluctantly knocked her unconscious.
そうだったのですか。
Kazumi lowered her eyes to the floor as she pondered what Watase had told her.
おかしなことが多すぎて、何から質問すればいいのか測りかねますが、まず一つ質問が。隊長はこのラボについてどう思われますか？
どう思うと？
N エリアには原子炉も火災もありませんでした。
True.
なのに隔壁は閉ざされたまま。何か理由があるとは思いませんか？
確かにな。理由となると俺にも見当もつかないが、ただ原子炉がなかったということは、ここはそもそも原子力研究所じゃないのかもしれない。
私もそう思います。しかしそうなると放射線もないということになりますが。
Because then if there's no radiation, then how are they being affected, right?
私が AD の投与をしなかった時は、肌のしびれや頭痛などの症状が出ました。
ああ、俺も汚染区域に入ると頭痛や気絶、果ては吐血までいろんな症状が出た。だったらやっぱりここには何かヤバいものが蔓延してるんだよ。
では N エリアにあった あの機械は原子炉じゃなくて一体何なんでしょう。
Just as Kazumi said that, a fragmented memory flashed through Watase's brain.
そういえばなんかあの機械どこかで見た気が。
Oh, really?
何ですって？記憶を失う前ですか？
違う、もっと最近のつい数時間ほど前の話だ。あれは確か。
But before Watase could remember, the door to the infirmary suddenly opened. Oh god. Watase and Kazumi turned around in shock to find Ukita standing there.
おやおや、これは隊長さんに副隊長さん。物音がするから来てみれば、君らは何をやっているのかね。
What's gonna happen? What? Ukita's eyes were glazed over with instability. His gaze locked onto the two survivors resting in their respective beds. And he's gonna think we did it even though we're trying to save them, right?
夏彦君、それに三宮君も。ずいぶんひどい怪我じゃないか。一体なぜ、そして今までどこに。
Watase carefully chose his words as he answered.
実は火災を消火しようと N エリアに入って、そこで彼らを保護したんだ。 N エリアの消火だと。なるほど。それで全て理解できたよ。君がやはり裏切り者だったということをね。
What?
おっさん。
He didn't understand why Ukita was angry. But Ukita ignored the bewilderment on Watase's face and continued talking in a subdued voice.
隊長さん、僕はこれでも君を信頼していたんだ。君は正義の人だと本当にそう思っていたんだよ。だからこそ彼女らを救うため、僕も僕なりに命を懸けた。なのに。
What?
許せん。
Ukita grunted, then reached into his breast pocket. He then pulled out a pistol. Ah, there's Ukita we know and love. It was the same pistol that Enna had given him. The one whose bullets and magazines had been removed and given to Jun and Enna for safekeeping, leaving Ukita with the gun itself. It should have been
おっ
unloaded.
さん、はったりのつもりか。その銃は弾倉も入ってないハリボテだろ。はったり？君は知らなかったようだね。弾倉がなくても弾丸さえあれば銃を撃つことはできるのだよ。もっとも一発ずつだがね。弾丸ってそんなもんどこに？さて。
You better not have done anything to motivate. I'm just saying. Ukita's attitude made it clear that he was apparently wasn't bluffing.
脆弱な正義と笑うがいいさ。だがこれが僕の選択だ。君を殺してこの状況が終わるならそうしよう。
Why would that put an end to this?
一生に一度くらいは罪に手を染めてでも。
Ukita's words made no sense. His face was clearly brimming with insanity.
浮田さん。
待ておっさん、そいつを撃つ前に聞いてくれ。あんたは知らされてなかったのかもしれないが N エリアに原子炉は存在しなかったんだ。だから俺たちが放射線を恐れる必要なんて初めからなかったんだよ。
If it was Ukita's fear of radiation that had caused him to fall so far off the beaten track, then hearing that would likely bring him back to his senses. However,
君はこの後に及んでそんなたわごとを。
what?
信じろ、本当なんだ。まあどちらでもいいさ。どうせ君の任務はここで終わりだ。
What?
死ねえ裏切り者。
Ukita pulled the trigger. Watase froze in terror. Oh, no, don't tell me Kazami. If Kazami gets shot. Oh.
隊長。
No. Ukita's bullet bore a hole into the wall behind Watase. Whew.
おっさん。
Watase pulled his pistol out as Kazami grappled with Ukita. At least it's only one shot, right? Ukita frantically turned around where he caught sight of the gun pointed straight at him. Watase had a chance to shoot him in the back right there, but he couldn't pull the trigger. He didn't even know if there were any bullets left in that pistol. Ukita ran right out the door and out of sight. The only trace of him left was the shouts coming from the hallway.
とうとう本性を現したな、隊長さん。
What?
だが僕は必ず君を裁いてやる。そのことを忘れるな。
What? The sound of Ukida's footsteps disappeared in the direction of Area 4.
くそ、おっさんのやつどうしちまったんだ。
There was something suspicious about Watase, no question about it, but Ukida was taking things way too far. He then suddenly realized Kazami was staring at the gun in his hands.
隊長、その拳銃は。
そういえばさっき話してなかったな。これは N エリアで拾ったものだ。夏彦のそばに落ちていたんだ。
そうだったんですか。
It seems she was scared of the pistol. Watase quickly put it back in his breast pocket and changed the
とに
subject.
かくすぐにこの場所から移動しよう。おっさんに知られてしまった以上、いつまでもここに留まっているのは危険だからな。
Natsuhiko's transfusion was still in progress, and Sadio hadn't shown any signs of regaining consciousness. Their lives would be in danger if another fight broke out in the infirmary.
それに先生も危ない。
Yeah.
椿山さんですか。そういえば彼女はどこに。
She's probably still sleeping in the room that
第
I
2エリア
knocked
の
her
小
out
部屋
in.
に置いてきた。おっさんはあの様子じゃ先生も襲いかねない。
わかりました。では天川くんの輸血を続けたまま椿山さんと合流しましょう。
Kazami attached the blood pack to the transfusion kit to Natsuhiko's body. Watase then carried him, with Kazami doing the same for Sadio, as they all left the room. But by the time Watase and Kazami returned to the office in Area 2, the door had been totally destroyed.
なんだこりゃ。
There was now a giant hole in the door, big enough for a human to fit through. Now the destruction of the door opening mechanism meant nothing at all.
先生。
Watase and Kazami frantically climbed through the hole. But there was no one there. Perhaps Enna had regained consciousness and escaped on her own. Watase was glad that she was apparently okay, but
誰がこんなことを。どうやってこの扉を破壊した。
嫌な予感がします。逃げましょう隊長。
oh no,
どこ
was
か
it
安全なところまで。
was it Jun? Because she has like the cutter thing?
あ、
Watase and Kazami ran out of the room without a moment's delay. They then neared the connecting passageway to Area 1 when... Yeah! A strange noise coming from up ahead stopped them in their tracks.
何の音だ。
Watase held his breath, then peeked into the passageway from a nearby corner. Moribe. Jun was about 10 meters away, wielding the engine cutter. She muttered something as blood poured down from her head.
そうだ。やっぱりそうなんだよ。
Moribe?
もう仕方ない。そうしなきゃみんなを守れない。私があいつを殺さなきゃ。
Moribe?
辛くても頑張らなきゃ。
Jun talked into thin air as if she were chanting a curse. Watase trembled with fear when he heard her. Am I... Moribe doubted me, so those doubts just kept on escalating. It was strange no matter how he thought about it, but Ukida's attempt on his life was still fresh in his mind. That was the only possibility he could come up with. Watase turned around and whispered into Kazami's ear.
まずい。森部のやつ、エンジンカッターを持ち出してやがる。
仕方ありません。ここは一旦引きましょう。
いいのか。森部はお前の妹分なのに。
ああなってしまってはおそらく私にも説得は無理でしょうから。
Watase nodded. He couldn't deny the truth in Kazami's pained statement. But as they tried to walk away, Watase's boots clacked noisily against the floor.
誰？
You heard that through the engine cutter? Are you serious? The sound of the engine cutter's motor rapidly grew closer.
いけません。
逃げるぞ、立花。
Watase and Kazami desperately broke off into a run through the passageway. They looked around for a place to hide without stopping. They fled into the Area 3 connecting passageway and closed the gate before Kazami chose to speak up in a frightened voice.
長、どこに逃げればいいのでしょう。
森部がエンジンカッターを持ち出した以上、どこかの部屋に立てこもっても無意味だ。ドアを破られちまう。
しかしどこか安全なところに逃げ込まなければ。
ああ、夏彦たちを背負ったまま逃げてちゃいずれ奴らに見つかっちまう。
Seriously. Watase checked his watch. It read 2:51 p.m. There were just 15 minutes left until the AD wore off. There was no doubt that everyone underground would be severely injured once that time came. A heavy silence hung in the air. Kazami soon shattered it with a sad voice.
どうしてこんなことに。助けるべき人が仲間に追われて逃げ場もなくて、誰も救えない。自分自身も。
That was the first time Watase heard her sound so hopeless. So much so that it nearly broke his heart just listening to her. Is there nothing we can do? Would it be better just to give it all up? But just as Watase thought this, an image flashed through his brain.
私、諦めちゃダメ。最後の瞬間まで諦めずにあがいて、死ぬならその後にしよう。
Okay. Watase gasped. What was that? Watase had no idea. It appeared to be one of his old memories, a scene from his now forgotten past. Those words were nostalgic, sad, and comforting. They gave Watase the strength he needed.
橘、諦めるな。
Watase relayed those words to Kazami.
まだ俺たちは生きている。救うべき相手もいる。だから最後の最後まであがいて、諦めるのはその後にしよう。
He softened the words a little bit, but yeah. Those words brought the silence between them back. All Watase could hear was the sound of Kazami breathing. But when they exited the connecting passageway, Kazami quietly spoke up.
はい。
Yeah. Her voice was brimming with the will of someone determined to escape from this despair.
脱出の術を探るんだ。
Watase said that to Kazami as they entered Area 3.
施設内のどこにも安全な場所がないなら外に逃げるしかない。だが N エリアの消火によって隔壁を開くという手段は使えなかった。他に脱出方法を探さなきゃならん。
Yeah, what are we gonna do now?
ええ。しかしどこかにそれがあるんでしょうか。我々も隊長が目覚める前からずっとそれを探していました。おそらくは外にいる司令長たちも。しかし司令長たちが突入してこないところを見ると厳しいように思います。
Yeah, it's probably not too good.
確かにな。
Watase had also looked for an alternate escape route as they'd found that escape via the cargo lift was impossible. But then other problems had taken over while he tried and failed to do that. And now they were... Watase suddenly remembered something at that moment.
待てよ。そういえば。
何か思い出したのですか？
Watase nodded and looked Kazami in the eye.
パイプだよ。エンジンルームに行った時、天井近くを太いパイプが走っていたのに気づいたか？
ええ。
あれはこの施設の近くにある湖から原子炉の冷却水を取っているパイプだとおっさんが説明していたんだ。
Ah, but since there's no reactor here...
あのパイプの中には常に水が流れていて、パイプに穴を開けると水が漏れてラボが水没するとのことだが、原子炉がなかったのならあのパイプの正体も怪しくなってくるんじゃないのか。もしあれがダミーであそこから脱出できるなら。
確かに。しかし全くのダミーとも思えません。あの巨大な機械の冷却を行っているのではないでしょうか。だとしたらやはりパイプに穴を開けるとラボが水没する危険性があります。
そうか。水流を止める方法があればいいんだが。
あの機械の正体が分かれば方策も立てられるかもしれませんが。
Once she said that, Watase's eyes widened.
ちょっと待て。あの機械の正体って。
え？
思い出したぞ。あの機械をどこで見たのかを。
どこでですか？
エンジンルームだ。エンジンルームの端末に入っていたなんとかっていう機械の電子マニュアル。その最初のページに例の巨大な機械の画像があった。
そういえば。
ひょっとしたらあのマニュアルに水流を止める方法が書いてあるかもしれん。
隊長、すぐに確認しましょう。
Watase nodded and headed for the engine room. They entered the engine room for the first time in what felt like forever. Watase and Kazumi laid Natsuhiko and Saryu onto the floor, ran up to the terminal, and began fiddling with it.
WX 粒子増幅器運用マニュアル。これだ。
Watase and Kazumi brought their shoulders together as they looked over the image on the monitor. WX Particle Amplifier Operation Manual. Introduction. This document is an instruction manual for the WX Particle Amplifier. Due to the fact that there is a great danger involved in this operation, please read the manual carefully before you proceed. Furthermore, the properties of the WX particles have extremely harmful effects to the body. Examples include dysesthesia, brain dysfunctions, genetic abnormalities, etc. The symptoms are dependent on the level of particle energy as listed below. Without AD, no effects. Okay, so 200 millisieverts to 2,000 to 4,000 is nausea, headaches, abnormalities, brain dysfunctions, faint consciousness. 8,000 is unconsciousness. The intensity and probability of displaying the aforementioned symptoms vary depending on the energy levels. With AD, okay, no effects. So you can do a little bit better because 8,000 to 12,000 is faint consciousness and whatnot. 80 adds up to 4,000 millisieverts of protection, hence the increased levels. When using the amplifier normally, the particle energy levels should not exceed 2,000 millisieverts. When used for advanced experiments, the particle energy levels should not exceed 4,000 millisieverts.
立花、書いてあることの意味がわかるか？
いえ、WX 粒子というものは聞いたことがありません。人体への悪影響の内容を見るに、放射線に類似したものなのではと推察できます。
Yeah, why would you want to replicate that though? Watase felt the same, but now wasn't the time to be thinking about it.
冷却水に関する記述はないか？
Watase read through the manual until a certain passage caught his eye. Regarding the water coolant system, the amplifier generates large quantities of heat while in operation. Thus, a water coolant system has been installed in the engine room that takes natural water in from Lake Urokume to utilize it as coolant fluid. The coolant is drawn through the intake pipe and is drained through a drainage pipe. Both pipes are 1 meter in diameter, 2.4 centimeters thick. Both have a volumetric flow rate of approximately 1,200 liters per minute. The coolant taken in by the intake pipe is drained once it's increased temperature by approximately 25 degrees Celsius. In other words, if Lake Rokume is at 28 degrees Celsius during August, the coolant is expelled at 53 degrees Celsius. Okay? The control of the water flow is carried out by a forced circulation pump located in the drainage pipe. Furthermore, there's a filtering mechanism within the intake pipe in order to prevent any foreign bodies from contaminating the coolant fluid. The filtering mechanism operates at high speeds to ensure that only distilled/filtered water is used as coolant. The expulsion of foreign bodies such as algae is carried out by a foreign body expulsion outlet located in the filtering mechanism. Should the filtering mechanism ever break down, there is a risk of unfiltered water entering the amplifier causing severe damage. Therefore, a floodgate located in the intake pipe will close in the event that the filtering mechanism breaks down, thereby preventing the flow of unfiltered water. At the same time, the forced circulation of pump and amplifier will cease operation, stopping the flow of coolant. The location of each device can be seen in the diagram below.
これだ。
Okay, got it. Watase muttered that in a low voice as he looked
や
at
はり
it.
脱出口はここしかない。
He looked up at the ceiling to find the intake pipe and drainage pipe running side by side. There was a ladder next to the pipes that led right up to them. Watase strained his ears and he heard the sound of water running. He could also see a large machine located at the intake pipe. It was apparently the filtering
あ
mechanism.
のろ過機構が故障すれば、いや、
Yep.
破壊してしまえば水流は止まる。そうすればこのパイプから6名湖に脱出できるぞ。
確かに。
Clever.
しかし、水流を止めた上でどうすればいいのでしょうか。 この図を見ると取水パイプは6名湖の水位より下に位置しています。
Yeah, so we have to swim up.
もし取水パイプに穴を開けてしまったら、水流が止まっていてもラボは水没してしまいます。
となると排水パイプに穴を開けるしかないだろうな。水流を止めた上でパイプの上部に穴を開ければさほど水は溢れないはずだ。
しかし排水パイプの中に満たされているのは増幅器とやらによって熱された水です。仮に水温が53度だとしたら熱くて耐えられません。排水パイプの下部に穴を開けてパイプ内の水を全て抜いてしまうという手もありますが、
それは危険だ。どのくらいの水が漏れ出てくるかわからない。万が一とんでもない量の熱水が溢れてきたら、この施設に残っている人間が溺れ死ぬ可能性もある。ユーリやモリベやオッサンや他の要救助者たちも。
一か八かでやってみるわけにはいきませんね。
だからやっぱり
Gotta
穴
do
を開ける
something
場所
though.
は排水パイプの上部だ。
ではクリアしなければならない問題は3つ。1、どうやってパイプに穴を開けるか。2、どうやって水で満たされたパイプ内で呼吸を確保するか。3、どうやって53度の熱水に耐え500メートル離れた6名湖まで到達するか。
考えよう、立花。その方法を、その3つさえクリアできればここから脱出できる。
There's some pretty tough problems to solve. Watasen and Kazumi looked at each other and started thinking.
まず1、どうやってパイプに穴を開けるか。これはなんとかモリベからエンジンカッターを奪えば。
いや、それは危険すぎる。そうしなくてもいいものがある。
え？
檜山の斧だ。例の斧は今は N エリアに
Okay,
落ちている。
alright.
厚み 2.4 センチのパイプなら人力でもきっと穴を開けられるさ。
可能ですか？
俺を誰だと思ってる？
Who do you think I am? Kazumi grinned when she saw Watase trying to act tough.
信じますよ。
Oh, my heart. I'm done. We're done. This episode's over.
よし、じゃあ次だ。水で満たされたパイプ内で呼吸を確保する方法。
それについては私に考えがあります。
なんだ？
簡易基地に一つ残った空気ボンベです。あのボンベの容量は約20分。水中を500メートル歩くのに十分とは言い切れませんが、あれしかないでしょう。
しかし空気ボンベは面体が壊れたから使えないんじゃなかったか？
大丈夫。ボンベから伸びているホースを手で保持し、直接口に加えればいいのです。
I mean, it's not the best idea, but I guess it's better than dying.
これは片手が塞がってしまう上、会話もできなくなるので消火時には使えない方法です。だから今まで提案しなかったのですが。
水の中を歩くだけならなんとかなるか。
It was a very risky plan, but one they had to bet on. Their plan was looking more and more feasible with each problem they tackled. But for all their efforts, the true problem still remained.
じゃあ最後の問題だ。3、どうやって53度の熱水に耐えるか。
Kazumi nodded and answered.
まず気温の53度と水温の53度は全く別物です。
Yeah,
液
that's
体が
true.
肌に接すると気化冷却作用が起きなくなるため、熱気よりも熱水の方がはるかに人体にダメージを与えます。53度のお風呂に入ったことはないでしょう。人はその温度のお湯に耐えられるようにできてません。だから水流を止めた上で水が冷えるのを待ちましょうか。
良さそうだが時間がかかりそうだな。厚み 2.4 センチのパイプってほとんど魔法瓶みたいなもんだろ。
確かに。
多少水温が下がったのが確認できたらやけど覚悟で突入してみるか。
我々は仮に耐えられたとしても要救助者、特に天川君はこの重傷です。耐えられるとは思えません。
そうか。そもそも夏彦を連れて脱出すること自体かなり難しいのか。
しかし一人だけでも脱出できたら司令長たちを呼んでくることができるのですが、警察を呼ぶことだってできます。そうすれば、錯乱している浮田さんたちも取り押さえることができ
Yeah,
る
that might
で
be
しょう。
good.
じゃあせめて一人だけでも熱水に耐えて脱出する術が見つかればいいんだな。
Watase thought carefully about everything he'd been through up until this point. He mobilized all the excessive knowledge he'd gained in the last 5 hours. Think, is there anything in this facility right now that can withstand heat? He and Kazami were wearing firefighting suits. They had fire-resistant properties, but they probably wouldn't be any use against hot water. What's more, there were cuts in them from all over their sleeves and neck area, so water would just get in from there. Then, is there anything we can use that can completely seal the damaged spots? But even if they could, their faces would still be completely exposed, so it's probably impossible to make the whole thing airtight. Come on, don't give up, think! There's just gotta be a way! He remembered everything he'd seen up until this point. First, there was the gear he'd observed in the makeshift base, the air tank, air jack, AD, Procyon, and engine cutter. Next was the things that he had on him, his PDA and security card. Both were useless here. Finally, there was what they'd found in the facility, the transfusion packs, transfusion kit, oxygen tank, Chiron, distilled water, the pistol, all of them useless. Did I see anything else? The answer has to be here, I know it! He looked back on the path he'd taken to reach this point. He'd woken up, met Kazami and Jun, then rescued Yuri. They geared up at the makeshift base, met Ena and Ukita, then began their search after seeing the images of Natsuhiko and the others. They discovered their co-worker's body, but still continued their search regardless, then turned on the sprinkler system and put out the fires. Watase gasped. He remembered something Kazami had said. Something way back at the start of the search, when they were at the makeshift base.
ちなみに他にも放射線防護服が2つあったんですが、
This man, for having amnesia, has incredible memory.
防護服は消火活動中に破損してもう使い物にならないのです。気密性、耐火性、耐水性に優れ、面体部分にボンベを直接装着できることが強みだったのですが。
Kazami had told them that she'd been pointing to the ruin. Kazami had told him that as she'd been pointing to the ruined protection suits. Their faceplates had been cracked. He then remembered another thing he'd seen a while back. A body whose lower half had been burned, wearing a... Watase's eyes widened. Those two memories held the answer he needed.
あった。見つかったんだ。熱水に耐える方法が。
それは
防護服だよ。橘、最後の最後で役に立ってくれたぜ。
Kazami had said that the protection suits were airtight and had high water resistance. So if he wore one of them, hot water wouldn't leak in. That would turn the 53 degrees Celsius water into 53 degrees Celsius air, a temperature he could withstand.
しかし我々の防護服はすでに破損して。
大丈夫だ。俺に散弾がある。
散弾ですか？
今、脱出に必要なものを集めてくれ。橘は子供たちと一緒にここで待っていてくれるか。
Hesitation filled Kazami's eyes. It was indeed dangerous to go off on one's own in the facility now that Ukita and Jun were prowling it. However,
心配なのはわかるが、二人で行動するより一人の方が目立たない。こらえてくれ。
Watase said that and stepped on the ladder.
装備を揃えたらすぐに戻ってくる。
はい、お気をつけて。
Watase nodded and descended the ladder as fast as he could. He then headed for the makeshift base in Area 2. He picked up the air tank and one of the wrecked protection suits. This won't be enough to get us out of here. Watase took off the cracked faceplate, threw it aside, then ran out of the base. He then went to Area N and picked up the axe there. Then headed straight for Area 4 this time. All of the protection suits I've seen so far have been damaged in some way. Tachibana and Moribe have broken faceplates, Dojima's was all battered up, and the lower half of Hiyama's is completely burned up. But if I combine them together... Watase ran into the elevator hall with that thought in his mind. He then found himself faced with Hiyama's body.
すまん、檜山。
Watase apologized to Hiyama and then ripped his faceplate off. Now I have everything I need. He had the axe, an air tank, a perfectly intact faceplate, and an undamaged protection suit. Watase carried all of them and went off running again. He headed towards the engine room, where Kazami and the kids were waiting for him.
すまん、遅くなった。
Kazami ran over to him as soon as he returned to the engine room.
隊長、どうしたのですか？その防護服は。
複数の防護服の無事な部分をつなぎ合わせた。
そんな方法が。
Yep. Kazami said that with admiration in her voice. Watase nodded, then
立
continued.
花、これでようやく脱出できるぞ。
ええ。
Kazami nodded, then pointed to the pipe near the ceiling.
図面を見るに、奥側のパイプが排水パイプらしいです。間違って取水パイプを破壊したら、このラボ自体が水没してしまいます。どうかご注意を。
I'll be careful.
分かってる。ここまで来てそんなヘマはしないさ。まずはろ過機構を破壊してくれ。ちょっと待っていてくれ。
Watase gripped the axe and walked over to the filtering mechanism. He then swung down on the control board with all his might. Dang. After hitting it several times, the quiet sound of running water finally stopped.
止まったぞ。
これでパイプ内に入れますね。
Watase nodded and turned to Kazami.
さて、最後の選択だ。防護服は一着しかない。俺とお前のどっちが行くべきだと思う？ここに残っても WX 粒子とやらに脅かされるだろうが。
I think she should go. I really do. Kazami hesitated for a moment before answering.
私が行くべきだと思います。
Yeah, definitely.
なぜ？
ここに残るよりパイプ内に入る方が確実に危険だからです。
No, I don't want you to be hurt though. I just want you to be safe and out.
熱水が満ちる中を500メートルも歩くなんて、ボンベの空気が持つかどうかも本当に微妙だし、そんなところにあなたを行かせられません。
Now, when you say it that way, I was thinking that would be the safer option. Kazami stared right at him. Watase gave a faint smile.
そう答えると思ったよ。でもな、立花、それはダメだ。
What?
お前、足を怪我してるだろ？
Yeah.
その足で狭いパイプ内を500メートルも歩けるのか？
いいえ、これ式の傷。ここまで天川君たちを連れてこられたんですから。
だけど少しはスピードは落ちるはずだ。そうなるとやはり生存率が
I don't want her to be like stuck with crazy people though. That was my thought, was like get her out, get her safe, and then we can have other people come in and figure out what's going on, right? Because like if I go out there, I'm being dubbed a traitor. I might be killed on the spot once they see I've made it out. So
パイプに突入するやつの背にはこの施設内の全員の命がのしかかってるんだ。だったら少しでも成功率を高くするべきだろ。だから立花、パイプには俺が突入する。
Watase said that in a clear voice.
これは命令だ。逆らうことは許さん。
隊長、逆らいます。
おいおい、何言ってんだよ。立花らしくもない。
でも
俺は最初の頃どうしようもなく無力でお前に助けられてばかりだった。お前に認めてもらえればってずっと思ってたんだ。だから最後くらいカッコつけさせてくれよ。
Kazami looked at the floor silently.
はい。
And then finally gave him a resigned nod. Watase felt a wave of confidence wash over him.
よし、それじゃ次は突入の準備だ。防護服を着るのを手伝ってくれ。
ええ。
Watase put the protection suit on. Kazami set the air tank in the faceplate. Watase then carried the faceplate and air tank under his right arm while holding the axe with his left hand, then turned to Kazami.
よし、準備万端だな。
I'm gonna save. I don't know. I guess I'll save it here. Because I think this is the last choice. 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what it's telling me to do.
俺はここから脱出して助けを呼んでくる。
I hope it's the right choice.
お前たちを置いていくのはやっぱ怖いが、待っていてくれ。
What's this music? What's going on with this music? Kazami nodded without uttering a word. Watase felt his heart ache at the sad look on her face. She was the woman who'd once been his girlfriend. His partner who he'd fallen in love with because they were similar, but had also broken up with because they were too similar. That's why Watase was painfully aware of how she felt. How she was worried about him, and how she felt discouraged about being left in this place with no AD. But they didn't have time to lament their parting. This isn't the time to be taking it slow. But in spite of that thought, Watase couldn't hold back his feelings for Kazami. Not his feelings as a rescue worker, but as a man.
Kazami.
Watase called her by the first name for the first time since he'd woken up. Her eyes widened at the same time as he kissed her lips. What? Oh! He could feel her gasp. He'd probably kissed those lips many times. They felt somewhat nostalgic to him, and he could also feel her heartbeat through them. Oh! Kazami let the strength flow out of her body as if she were giving herself entirely to him. Watase embraced her tightly, and then gently let go of her. Kazami looked at him with moist eyes.
あなた今風見って記憶が戻ったの？
いいや。
Aww. Watase answered her honestly.
どうしても思い出せないんだ。お前と付き合っていた頃のことも、どうして別れてしまったのか。だけど記憶が戻らなくても、その頃の思いは心の底に残っている気がする。
I mean, on one hand, it's a bold move, right? Because, like, she might not want to be with him, so him forcing himself onto her is a bad thing. But, like, I want them to be together.
お前に対する思いだけは、俺がお前を心底愛してた。
Aww. A faint tinge of red covered Kazami's cheeks. Watase gently caressed those cheeks.
なあ、風見。俺にこんなことを言う資格はもうないのかもしれないが、もしここから無事に脱出することができたら、
Yes, please, yes.
一緒にあの公園を歩かないか。
Please? That was the one fragment of their past together that Watase had remembered a short while ago. It was probably a memory of a happy time in both of their lives. Kazami smiled and nodded.
叶うならば。
Yay!
よし、約束だからな。
Watase said that with a smile, then put the faceplate on.
行くぞ。
And with that shout, he began climbing the ladder. Once he reached the top of the drainage pipe, he readied the axe. He then swung it down into the pipe with all his might. Sparks flew as he created a small hole in the pipe. The pipe was as solid as a rock, so it was only natural that one strike wasn't enough to open up a hole big enough for someone to fit through. This music though, huh? Watase let out a roar and kept striking the pipe over and over again. He put all of his strength into each swing, filling them with his will to escape from this place. The hole kept getting bigger and bigger. Steam gushed out of the pipe and some of the hot water poured out. But it was only a little. He had really stopped the water from running. He then kept swinging away until the axe's blade had finally smashed. But he had already done enough. He'd opened up a hole big enough for him to climb into.
よし。
Watase looked down the ladder. Kazami was looking up at him with a worried look on her face.
立花、パイプに穴が開いた。俺は行く。子供たちのことを頼むぞ。
Kazami soon answered him.
隊長、必ず戻ってきてくださいね。
Aww.
さっきの約束、きっと果たしてくださいね。
I love this ending so much more already.
ああ。
Watase nodded, then climbed into the hole. He was now in the only way out of this facility. The pipe was filled with hot water. Darkness dyed the place pitch black. Watase could feel the heat through his protection suit. If he could walk 500 meters through this thing, he'd end up at Lake Dokume. Here I go. Watase steeled himself, then began his lonely trek through the darkness to save everyone. What's going on? Why is the music all ominous? Are we going into credits? Don't go into credits! What's happening? I feel like we might be going into credits. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just darkness. Should I click or should I not? I'm gonna click. Okay. That might have been credits. I don't know. I don't know if that was... Okay, whatever. Anyways, Watase had walked about 50 meters from the hole he'd broken open in the pipe. But now, he stood frozen in the middle of that flooded pipe. What? What? There was something blocking his path. It was too dark for him to make it out, but he could already tell what it was. It was the forced circulation pump that had been on the blueprint, but he'd never expected it to completely block the inside of the pipe. Why? I haven't come all this way for nothing. Watase punched the pump. It was hard and didn't budge an inch, just like the bulkhead. It didn't seem like something that human strength alone could deal with. Break! Break! I can make it to the lake if I can get rid of this thing! Then I can save everyone! Watase kept on desperately punching it, but his blows had little strength under the water. It soon grew painful for him to breathe. Crap! There was still enough air in the tank, but exerting his strength in 53 degrees Celsius water had been doing a real number on his heart and lungs. Despair rapidly overwhelmed him. His head was boiling from all the heat and trapped in the protection suit. If he stayed there, he'd only be ticking down the time to his death. Watase kicked the pump, then began going back the way he came. Really? After all that? Watase took off the faceplate once he came out of the boiling water. He then climbed onto the pipe and descended the ladder.
Taicho!
Watase turned around to find Kazami running towards him.
もう戻られたのですか?
すまない、立花。
You couldn't do it.
パイプの中に障害物があった。6名湖まではたどり着けない。
その障害物を破壊することはエンジンカッターを使うとか。
パイプ内は水で満たされている。水中じゃエンジンカッターは使えないだろう。そもそも人力で壊せるとは思えない。別の脱出口を探さなきゃならん。
しかし、もう本当に。
What are we gonna do now?
では、
もう一度最初に立ち返ってみよう。第2エリアの非常階段にある隔壁、あれを開ける方法を考えるんだ。
That couldn't even be called a plan. But they had no other options. Kazami just silently nodded. Watase took off his protection suit and picked up Natsuhiko.
行こう、立花。
Kazami followed suit by picking up Saryu, and they left the room. According to Watase's watch, it was currently 3:09 p.m. Only 7 minutes left until their AD wore off. Watase and Kazami's steps were weighed down by the heavy chains of despair. What? It had been hours since they last been here. The bulkhead was still closed, absolutely nothing had changed.
周囲の壁を破壊することはできないか?
Kazami, still carrying Saryu on her back, pondered Watase's question.
難しいでしょう。おそらく周囲の壁も隔壁と同様の材質でできていると考えるべきです。そうでなくては、当に司令長たちが爆薬を使ってここに突入しているはずです。
そうか。だったら天井を。
But before Watase could finish the sentence, his surroundings suddenly grew dark. What?
停電?
It seemed that the facility's power was out. Watase and Kazami looked around in confusion as a mechanical voice suddenly rang out.
主電源および予備電源が停止しました。非常用電源に移行します。
Okay. The lights came back on in coordination with that voice. It was somewhat dark, but nothing that hampered their visibility.
なんだ今の主電源が停止したって今さらどうして
Yeah, why? Watase turned to Kazami to ask her this, then gasped. Whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa! Whoa! Watase was struck speechless by what he was seeing. Saryu's slender arms were wrapped around Kazami's neck like a snake strangling its prey. Kazami gasped painfully for air as Saryu glared at Watase from behind her.
夏彦を解放して出ないとこの女の息の根を止める。
やめろサリュ。俺たちは君たちを救いたいだけなんだ。どうしてそれを分かろうとしない。
だから見えすいた嘘はやめろと言っている。あなたの夏彦を撃ったくせに。
What? Those words shot straight through Watase's heart.
今何を。
女、あなたは知らなかったの。
そうですよね。隊長が
What?
そんなことするはずないですよね。
Watase had no recollection of shooting Natsuhiko. However, he had memories that he couldn't explain. Watase just stood there at a total loss for an answer, and Saryu then whispered something to Kazami's ear.
知らないなら教えてあげる。この男はテロリスト。私たちは昨夜も今朝もこの男の襲撃を受けた。
What?
ここで起こっていることは全部あの男のせい。あなたにだって思い当たることはいくつもあるはず。
やめなさい。これ以上そんなこと聞きた
Say
くない。
what?
私は隊長を信じて。
ならよく見て。あの男の懐にあるものを。
She was of course talking about the gun that Watase had picked up in Area N.
あれはおそらくこの男の持ち物。夏彦はあの銃で撃たれて。
But at that moment, oh no, Kazami screamed and violently shook Saryu off her. Saryu's body went flying backwards. She then landed on the staircase. All Watase could do was watch the whole thing from beginning to end. Saryu proceeded to tumble down the staircase. She finally stopped at the landing of the stairs at B1. She wasn't budging an inch.
Saryu!
Watase frantically ran over to Saryu and checked her condition. But luckily, she did not display any injuries such as bone fractures, and her pulse and breathing were stable as well. Watase breathed a sigh of relief, just as Kazami came walking down the staircase on shaky feet.
隊長、三宮さん。
Her face was deadly pale. She looked really shaken up.
大丈夫。気を失っているだけだ。
そうですか。
Kazami's body was trembling. She then looked to Watase, with eyes full of fear.
立花。
Kazami was acting weirdly. She then wrapped her arms around her body as if she were trying to hold herself back.
隊長、私は。
She suddenly stopped talking as quickly as she'd begun.
どうした。
She didn't answer him. All she did was stare at him carefully. Anxiety welled up in Watase's heart.
立花。どうしてそんな目で俺を見るんだ。まさかサリの言ったことを信じてるのか。バカな。俺がテロリストのわけがないだろう。記憶喪失だろうとなんだろうと。俺が以前からずっとレスキュー隊員だったってことはお前たちが一番よく知ってるじゃないか。
Kazami didn't answer. Watase's anxiety only grew worse. Soon enough, she began talking in a quiet voice as if attempting to rid herself of her fear.
隊長、もう一度だけ質問してもよろしいでしょうか。
なんだ。
解けていなかった疑問があるんです。隊長はこの事故が起きた直後の 6時42分頃どうして地下に降りてきたんですか？
それはだから堂島と檜山に無線で呼ばれて。
だったら無線が通じていたということですよね。だけど隊長、私はね、その少し前に隊長に無線通信を試みていたんですよ。
Oh. Watase felt his insides freeze over. Now that she mentioned it, Kazami had said something to that effect way back. At 6:35 a.m., radio communication with Watase had suddenly ceased. There was an inconsistency with those words, which meant
堂島たちの無線は通じたのに、どうして私からの無線には出なかったんですか？何か理由があって意図的に出なかったんじゃないですか？救命任務の最中にそれを抜け何か別のことを行うために。
お前いつからそんなこと考えていたんだ？
隊長が記憶が少し戻ったと言った時から、地下に降りた理由を聞いた時からです。だけど言えなかった。あなたを信じたかったから。時刻の不整合についてはきっとあなたの記憶間違いだって思って。
Kazumi lowered her eyes and continued in a shaky voice.
私必死に隊長を信じようとしていたんです。
I feel like a bad person.
ずっと昔からあなたを信じ続けていたんです。あなたがどれほど変わろうとも記憶喪失になろうとも、だから先ほど抱きしめてくれたことは本当に嬉しかった。あなたが昔のあなたに戻ってくれた気がして。けど多分過去は過去なんです。いくら自分に言い聞かせようと、もうあなたを信じることを。
Just as she said that, Kazumi's face and tone of voice had changed.
できないのよ、渡瀬。さっきの三宮さんの話が本当だとしたら、何もかも辻褄が合ってしまうの。この施設の正体、以前のあなた。それを考えると答えは一つなのよ。
True nature?
立花、何を言っている？
あなたが殺したのなら、せめてあなたの栄誉のために。
I'm sorry, what? Kazami reached for a fire extinguisher stationed next to the emergency staircase.
立花、そんなもので何をするつもりだ？
Kazami didn't answer. Instead, she started talking with a voice full of lament.
私、あなたは道をたってしまった。その報いを受ける時が来た。
And a second later, Kazami swung the fire extinguisher sideways. Watase immediately blocked it with his arm. His bones creaked beneath the force of Kazami's merciless assault.
よせ立花、なぜこんなことを？
私、ごめんなさい、私。私にはもうこうするしか
I think she might have lost her mind a little bit. Though she was apologizing, Kazami's eyes were filled with the intent to kill. Why is this happening to Tachibana too? Watase shuddered, then promptly thrust Kazami away. Uh-oh. She fell on the staircase with the fire extinguisher still in hand. Watase took that chance to rush down the B1 and dash out of the stairwell. He continued to carry Natsuhiko as he ran. He was worried about Saryu too, especially since she was still lying unconscious in the stairwell. But it was all he could do to try to take Natsuhiko to a safe place. He and Kazami had been seeing each other heart to heart just a short while ago. They had been trusting each other, so why? Was it all just wishful thinking on my part? But the pain in his arm from Kazami's attack was all too real. It ached painfully with every vibration that came passing through him from the effort of running. as if to remind him of that harsh reality. He found himself blindly fleeing to one of the connecting passageways, but he heard the footsteps coming down from just up ahead. Who's there? No sooner had he thought that than did he see Jun heading in this direction. Oh, hey Jun, how's it going? She was holding the engine cutter in her hands. This is the good ending? Watase turned around and ran for it. He kept carrying Natsuhiko and escaped into some other area. He was panting. His whole body hurt like mad. But just as he felt like he could run no more, a dry sound reached his ears. Watase fell to the ground. His abdomen was hot. That heat soon warped into agony. He'd been shot in his flank. Watase looked around as he pressed his hand against his abdomen. He couldn't see anyone, but he could hear a voice coming from somewhere. Oh my god, everyone's going crazy. Watase stood up before Ukita finished talking. He reaffirmed his grip on Natsuhiko and started running again, all while blood was pouring from his flank. Fortunately, the bullet had apparently missed any organs, but the pain of the gunshot wound was great, and the bleeding just wouldn't stop. Watase ran as he looked for a safe place. Before long, he saw it. The connecting passageway to Area N. The only way to get past the gate that lay at the end was with the level N card that Watase had. Watase screamed and spurred himself onwards. He then made a break for Area N. But Sadia got in here somehow. He opened the gate and tumbled his way into the other side. A strange sensation ran through him as his fingertips convulsed, most likely due to the effects of the WX particles. But Watase endured them. I'm the only one with a level N card, which means I can shake them off if I close the gate. But at that moment, he looked back at the open gate and spotted Kazami in the passageway, fire extinguisher still in hand. Her glare pierced Watase, and then she made a mad dash straight for Watase. The gate started to slowly shut, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Kazami ran through the open gate and swung her fire extinguisher down at Watase's head. Sparks filled Watase's vision. His body shook left and right as he lost all sense of balance. She's gonna kill me if I don't do something. And if I die now, then Natsuhiko will also be in danger. Those thoughts held Watase's splintering consciousness in place. He then mustered the last of his strength and pushed Kazami right out of Area N. Kazami grunted at the almost exact moment the gate finished shutting. Watase could hear her on the other side. Her voice grew distant. Watase's headache and convulsions were growing more and more intense. Did the AD wear off? All the strength left him in the moment he thought that. He suddenly felt faint. Watase tried to fight off that feeling, but failed. The floor was growing closer and closer. Crap, I'm falling! Watase felt Natsuhiko's weight vanish from his back at the same time he fell. It seemed the force had flung him to the side. But there was no longer anything Watase could do about that. A thought made its way into Watase's faint consciousness. How did it come to this? Did I do something wrong? Thinking about it wouldn't yield an answer. He didn't know a thing. Way too many bizarre incidents had occurred in the past 6 hours. The sights and mysteries he witnessed up until that point flickered before his mind's eye. The loss of his memories. The 9 of them being trapped in the facility. The murder victims they'd found. The survivor who'd run away from him time after time. the wrecked cargo lift, and the body of the unidentified girl. The disappearance of their AD stock. The loss of any rhyme or reason to anything his companions said and did. The lack of any fires or nuclear reactor in Area N, and finding Natsuhiko on the brink of death instead. And the discovery and subsequent disappearance of Yuri's body. Was all of that actually real? He wasn't even sure of that anymore. But if it was real, then what the hell happened here? Where'd Yuri's body go? Kazami, Jun, Ena, Ukita, and Yuri. The faces of all those people who Watase had met up with up until this point materialized in his brain. No, that's not all. What happened to the 9th survivor? Where's Mashiro Toba? He didn't want to doubt anyone. But everyone was suspicious. I can't help but think that someone set things up so they'd end this way. But who was the mastermind? All that he knew for sure was that it wasn't him. And then... it can't be Natsuhiko. He was dying in here. So, I want to make sure at least he can get out of here. But Watase's consciousness was growing fainter by the second. Just before he lost consciousness, it happened. What? He heard the beating of a heart. For a moment, he thought it was his own heartbeat. But that wasn't the case. That sound appeared to be coming from somewhere closer. He could sense that something was moving next to him. It can't be. Watase forced his eyes open and looked that way. He was standing there. Why? The boy who was supposed to be on the brink of death was standing tall and glaring down at Watase with wide eyes. Why had he woken up so suddenly? Why was he glaring at Watase? Watase lay there without a single answer to any of those questions. The boy then spoke to him. What? But at the same time he'd registered Natsuhiko's voice, Watase's consciousness faded into darkness. What? At the same time, Labo entrance hall surface.
お戻りですか、天川博士。
ええ、状況は。
A conversation was underway. Uneasy men wearing protection suits were all lined up in the hall.
先ほど増幅器の停止を確認するとともに電力供給をカットしました。
Okay.
数値もすでに減衰に入ってます。
そう。あと3時間ね。
A man asked the woman wearing a white lab coat a question.
例の2名は生きているでしょうか。
そのことを祈るしかないわ。
了解。それでは待機を続けます。
The men in protection suits then dispersed throughout the facility. A great number of men with the same equipment were squirming about the entrance hall. A man who was being held back at the entrance to the facility started shouting.
ふざけるな！地上フランにも入れないとはどういうことだ！
地上の避難は終了しています。隔壁が開くのをお待ちください。
As the woman listened to that noisy argument from a distance, she turned her eyes deeper toward the facility. Specifically, she was looking at a shut bulkhead.
いつまでこんなことを繰り返すつもりなの？
There wasn't a soul there who could tell what emotions lay hidden in her eyes. She just said nothing and continued to stare at the bulkhead. And far beyond that shut bulkhead, in the depths of the facility, lay the bodies of those who had suffered the most unnatural deaths. One who had collapsed before accomplishing their goal. those who had become victims of malice. Corpses yet undiscovered. And the life that was currently on the verge of flickering out. In a long forgotten place in the corner of the vast facility. Lay a girl who was bleeding out. Her life was faint, and her consciousness was on the brink of fading. A faint voice passed through her barely moving lips. What is happening? However, her words fell on no ears, but dissolved into the darkness instead. I'm so confused. That was the good ending? Am I right in thinking that? That's the good ending, right? We did a good? Oh my god. That was absolutely insane. Okay, so I guess last time when it was pitch black and I clicked, it wasn't like the credits, right? Although, now I don't know what's happening. What? Hang on.
しかし、その平穏は一つの小さな事故から崩れ出した。遠巻きに少年を見つめる謎の少女。隣人から伝えられる不穏な警告。覚醒していく少年の能力と、蘇る忌まわしい過去の記憶。その中で彼らは本当の恐怖を知ることになる。大切な人を守るため、自らの過去を清算するため、少年たちは原子力研究所ラボに向かう。
Okay, but like I can't translate for anybody.
たとえそこに残酷な真実が待ち受けていようとも。
Okay.
ルートダブル、ビフォークライム、アフターデイズ。ルート、ビフォー。必ず君を救い出してみせる。
Okay, but why?
そのためなら何度だって君の時間を過去へ巻き戻す。
But why is it not pictured and subtitled? Okay, I unlocked answer mode for route A. By selecting answer during SSS input route A, you can choose to a preset value that will lead you on a oh! Now saving. Okay, obviously, I don't know if something was supposed to play there and it didn't, or if people are just supposed to know Japanese, because it didn't even have the translation, but basically, it's kind of like an advertisement or a trailer for the before scenario. It's talking about these children that have their daily life shattered by these events that have happened, and it ends up luring them into the facility known as Labo, and they end up rewinding time in order to go back to those days that they valued once more. But in the end, it's going to unlock some type of despair that nobody would have ever imagined. That kind of thing. Like, I'm kind of like summarizing everything, and if you have seen the first episode of the before video, which will be after this on the playlist, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm not really ruining anything, and you'll be caught up in one episode. But we're not done yet, because I still need to find out what the other sequence is that I haven't seen, and we're gonna go through the tips. So give me 1 second and I'll see if I can get through there.
それではこれより先日のラボ爆発事件に関する第3次報告をさせていただきます。まず皆さんもすでにご存知かとは思いますが、事件の概要から。事件が発生したのは9月16日。
A news report as to what
午前
happened.
6時19分。ラボの地下エリアにて同時多発的に爆発と火災が起こったことが発端になります。
Yeah, there were like dual explosions.
そして同日6時26分、緊急災害マニュアルに従って救助要請を行った特別高度救助隊シリウスが現場に到着。ラボの地上エリアにて救助活動を開始しました。ほどなくラボの地下エリアにいた研究員および職員の避難は
一部の例外を除き終了しました。
And they got most people
しか
out,
しシリウスの隊員5名が職員の勧告を無視して地下へ侵入。
but there were 5 people that
胴
ignored
体司令長との連絡
orders and went to the basement.
ラボ内で KSN が発令されたのはその直後7時15分のことでした。
And that 7:15 is when the
それからラボ
emergency
内で
order
起こ
was
ったこ
issued.
とに関しては不明な点が多いのですが、少なくとも12時20分まではシリウスの隊員3名が救助活動を行っていたことが胴体の通信記録に残っておりました。そして18時17分、ラボ中心部で大規模な爆発が発生。ラボの地下エリアと地上エリアを閉鎖していた隔壁が開いたのはその2分後になります。
Okay, so there's another explosion, and then 2 minutes after is when the doors were opened. I don't know why it's blank. Like, is that supposed to happen, or is my game just freaking out? I really don't know. But yeah, it was a news report covering what had happened for the explosions, but it's probably the story that they want to tell, right? Not what's really happened. It was like these explosions happened at these times. These individuals were here, most of the people got out safely, and then like that kind of thing. But I just don't know what else to really do with that information, because that was kind of it. This is the other ending that we got, so that's fine. I guess, tips. Okay, we'll just go through the tips in here and see what's going on, and hopefully there's not a ton of them. Okay, so here's the air jack. Mat-shaped airbag that can lift things when inflated. One of the rescue squad's tools used to clear heavy objects, used in vehicular accidents, to lift cars or other similar situations. Though many situations call for seemingly simple tasks of lifting objects, the situation and the object can vary widely. When using an air jack, careful consideration must be used as to the size and the shape of the mat. Depending on the situation, portable winches or hydraulic jacks are used as well. Okay, neat. So this one's fiction. Okay. Oh god, there's so much. In 2020, Rokume City was the first in the nation to experiment with making all of its vehicles electric and equipping them with automatic driving systems, ADS. Today, one can input the destination to a car's navigation system and safely ride all the way without ever touching the steering wheel. In case of emergencies, cars can still be switched to manual mode. Even in manual mode, if one forgets to brake, the car can still detect that error and decelerate automatically. Thus, traffic accidents have become a extreme rarity in Rokume City. Automatic driving has brought down the rate of accidents to just 4% of what they were when manual driving was the norm. All vehicles traveling within the city are subject to computer control by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism Lands, Transportation Branch, and Rokume Automobile Control Office. That is a mouthful. Computer also allows the offices to know where each vehicle is at all times. As a result, the number of vehicle-related crimes, traffic jams, and traffic accidents have all decreased. However, some raise concerns that Rokume City government has unilateral control over all vehicles. So that's interesting, especially when you look at the accident that happened in the other scenario, in the before scenario. Engine cutter, we're pretty familiar with this. A cutting tool consisting of a circular saw rotated by an engine's drive motor. A diamond saw blade can cut through things like iron, concrete, or vehicles. Cutting can either be dry or wet. Dry cutting is a simple rotation of the blade, while wet cutting uses a water tank to reduce friction and cool the machine. Rescue squads use dry cutting because it allows the machine to be more lightweight and easier to handle. Chiron! A hemostatic agent in a tube developed by Betchulge's new treatments. The viscous gel is useful for first aid to close up wounds to stop bleeding, as has been widely adopted by medical responders and rescue squads. Chiron, also spelled Chiron or Chiron, is a half-man, half-horse centaur from Greek mythology. He studied music and medicine from Apollo, the sun god, and hunting skills from Apollo's sister, the moon goddess Artemis. Chiron is depicted as an immortal wise man who helps the sick and teaches heroes wisdom, martial arts, and medicine. Finally, he was poisoned by an arrow from Heracles and, unable to bear the pain, made a bargain with the chief god Zeus to turn over Chiron's immortality to Prometheus so that he could die instead. Regretful for Chiron's death, Zeus raised him to the heavens as a constellation Sagittarius, or so is said, but the description is not found in Greek mythology. Interesting? Okay, retrograde amnesia. A memory defect caused by the disturbance of consciousness due to injury or illness, preventing one from recalling events prior to the disturbance. There are 3 processes of memory: the addition of information into the brain, that is called encoding; the retention of the memory is called storage; and finally, the retrieval of that information is called recall. The loss of the ability to recall information is a memory lapse, which can, for example, be caused by disorders in storage and recall. Memories stored in the human mind can either be episodic memories, which relate to oneself as an individual, or procedural memories, which relate to skills and processes, the so-called muscle memory. Watase appears to have lost only his episodic memory, but some of the procedural memory as well. In contrast to retrograde amnesia, there's also anterograde amnesia, which is the loss of the ability to remember new events that happened after the onset of amnesia. In other words, a disorder of encoding. Weird. Air tank! Okay, a rescue tool that can be used as a literal lifeline for rescue workers and survivors during a rescue dispatch. It lasts only around 20 to 30 minutes with intense usage, but if necessary, can hold oxygen for long periods of time. In the case of a fire, however, it's normally filled with regular air. Since the faceplates were damaged in series of suits, the air tanks could no longer be used for respiration. However, the air tanks could still be used to inflate the air jack mat, or as a power source for air cutters and aerosols depending on the situation. Thus, the air tank is a versatile, practical tool for rescue work. Good to know. Dispatch. When firefighters are sent to a fire or other disaster, it's called a dispatch. It is a sort of industry term. The actual location of the fire is called a fire scene. Alright, nuclear reactor scram. Okay. When an anomaly is detected in a nuclear reactor, an automatic or manual emergency system shutdown of the nuclear reactor is called a scram. In the event of a particularly big anomalies or failures, it is wise to have measures to cool the reactor to stability. Got it. I know English, I promise. It's just I've been recording for a little bit, so forgive me. Where'd I go? Stability by inserting a neutron absorbing control rod, adding neutron slowing agents, or by adding a coolant in accordance with the model of the nuclear reactor. If these measures cannot be taken due to power failures caused by natural disasters, there's a risk of the fuel rod melting down due to its own decay heat, or in the worst case, the reactor could explode. Labo uses a boiling water reactor which pulls in water from Lake Rokume as both a slowing agent and coolant. Alright, the Grand Communicator Discovery refers to the year 2014, memories, when elementary particle physicist Miyoko Tenkawa proposed the informational field hypothesis, and the Andrezi witch hunt made the world keenly aware of the existence of BC. As if in concert with those events, newborn children around the world began to be born with mutated IGF2R genes. The rate of incidence of these births grew year by year. Now in 2030, roughly 166,000 people are ability level 1 or higher, meaning about 0.002% of the 8.3 billion people alive are communicators. Incidentally, Japan has an exceptionally high percentage of communicators, with roughly 4,800 people in ability level 1, or about 0.004% of the, 120 million Japanese citizens. People joke that the increased population or proportion is due to Japanese culture of not expressing one's inner emotions, but the real reason for Japan having a rate twice of that of the world average is still unclear. Okay, third man factor is a life-threatening tale of life-threatening situation. Someone hears a voice that is neither their own nor their partner's. The voice tells them to keep on living for as long as they can. Encouraged by that voice, they're able to survive. The third man factor is a phenomenon people encounter during life or death situations where a supernatural existence leads the way to survival. At times, it encourages them, guides them to safety, or even appears as more than just a voice, taking the guise of a person. It appears in various situations such as high mountains, battlefields, remote lands, and accident scenes. It cannot be explained as a mere near-death hallucination. Are all these occurrences of communicators in the past? While the possibility of BC users existing since ancient times cannot be denied, it may be something else. An omnipresent third man that intervenes with people throughout the world, an existence that comes to the aid of those struggling for survival. Could such a thing actually exist? Oxygen deficient air, okay? Refers to air with a lower oxygen content than normal air. Normal air is roughly 21% oxygen, and humans need at least 18% oxygen to breathe safely. At 16% and lower, humans start experiencing headaches and tinnitus. At 14% or lower, consciousness becomes hazy. At 10% or lower, loss of consciousness becomes common. When oxygen concentrations drop this low due to fires or poor ventilation, the air becomes threatening poisonous gas. Furthermore, an oxygen-deprived body instinctively tries to breathe, rapidly decreasing the oxygen concentration in the blood. Just 5 or 6 minutes less than 6% oxygen air can be fatal. That's not good. Posing a vehicular accident, okay? Gasoline is so volatile that in Japanese it is sometimes called kihatsuyu, or volatile oil, okay? As long as there's a fire source, vapors of the petroleum product can ignite at temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius. Therefore, in vehicular accidents requiring rescue squad assistance, the vehicle must be hosed down to prevent ignition due to static discharge or other causes, even in the absence of fire. That's smart though, it really is smart. Furthermore, in this situation, hosing doesn't simply mean to spray water on the vehicle. Careless hosing can generate static electricity when the water lands, causing a fire instead of preventing one. That's also terrifying. Firefighter. Oh my god, why? Oh geez, it's so long. Okay. Includes fiction. A fire department is an organization that extinguishes and prevents fires. Members of a fire department who are dispatched to fire scenes are called firefighters. Their chief duties include extinguishing fires and saving lives. One thing of note is that while the word firefighter can be used as a generic term for all members of a fire department, it can also be used as a rank. The current 11 ranks in Japan's firefighting system are, from highest to lowest, Commissioner of Fire and Disaster Management Agency, Fire Chief Superintendent, Senior Fire Superintendent, Fire Superintendent, Battalion Chief, Fire Captain, Fire Lieutenant, which is Watase, Fire Sergeant, which is Kazami, Dojima, and Hiyama, Fire Assistant Fire Sergeant, and then Firefighter, which is Jun. In Japan, the police departments are prefectural, and the self-defense force is national, but in contrast, fire departments are municipal, with over 800 fire departments nationally. Furthermore, Fire and Disaster Management Organization Act of 1948 gave fire departments independence from police jurisdiction, making fire departments extremely local organizations. Some fire departments are organized into teams, like an engine crew in charge of the water pump and those for fire extinguishment, orange uniformed rescue squads in charge of life-saving, and emergency squads in charge of emergency medical services, as well as command posts that gather information on scene and gives orders, and ladder companies in charge of ladder truck operation. As a digression, due to the nature of a firefighter's professional duties, they must remain alert and ready to dispatch at almost any of the 24 hours of the day, and thus must prepare their own meals. Many of them enjoy udon for its ease of preparation and balanced nutrition with proper ingredients. Udon is delicious. Okay, now we're diving into serious. Rokume City Fire Department's Special Elite Rescue Squad. A feature they possess is a district selection test like that of the Fire Disaster Management Agency, meaning those who pass are true elites. Sirius is divided into teams of 6, 5 members and 1 driver, with 3 teams total. Watase serves as a captain for Team A at the top of the list. Rokume City is an exceptionally rare case where a city with a population as small as 200,000 is assigned a Special Elite Rescue Squad. However, the Fire Services Act was revised based on the importance placed on the government-designated top-secret cities due to BC law. As a result, it became necessary for top-secret cities to have Special Elite Rescue Squads. Also, Sirius refers to the Alpha Star of Canis Major. An Alpha Star is the brightest star in a particular constellation. The star Sirius is the next brightest star seen from Earth following the Sun. In the eyes of the survivors trapped in fires and calamities, their stars of hope wear orange jumpsuits. Those stars are Rokume City Fire Department Special Elite Rescue Squad Sirius. That was a mouthful. Command post. Oh, jeez. We're gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. It doesn't matter. Various forces gather at the scene of disaster, such as the life-saving experts of a rescue squad, the engine crew with a fire truck, and the emergency squad consisting of 3 people with a transport ambulance. A frontline command post is established at the scene in order to give all of these proper direction. A commander is stationed at the command post at all times, giving directions to all forces based on reported information. The commander in charge of the current level meltdown incident is Battalion Chief Murakami. Watase's duty before he lost his memories was to devise specific rescue methods as tactics on scene for rescue workers on the front line based off of high-level instructions and objectives handed down from the command post. Elephant's Foot. Solidified lava-like lump of radioactive materials like uranium and plutonium mixed with molten concrete that still silently exists within the hastily built sarcophagus surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The elephant's foot, named after its odd shape, still emits large amounts of radiation today. It is even said that those who got within eyeshot of the elephant's foot were unable to escape death from acute radiation exposure. That is terrifying. Dark energy, okay? A cosmological constant lambda that appears in Einstein's gravitational field equation was a concept made under the assumption that the universe was filled with gravity and a force opposing gravity, resulting in a static universe, neither contracting nor expanding. Later, however, when Edwin's Hubble observations made it evident that the universe appeared to be expanding, Einstein regretted the cosmological constant as the biggest blunder of his life. Later, he proposed the existence of a new quintessential substance with the property of repulsing gravity as something that would rather support the idea of accelerating expansion of the universe. However, the existence of said substance still hasn't been proven. The commonality between these propositions of Einstein's is that they both propose the existence of a gravity-repulsing energy in the void of space. The repulsive energy is said to exist all over the universe and is called dark energy. What is dark energy? Does it even exist? The answer to those questions was found in the informational field theory proposed by Miyoko Tenkawa. Fire extinguishing. Okay? In the world of firefighting, fire can either be suppressed or extinguished. The fine nuance, oh my god, my brain, so much information is just going straight into it right now. But it's okay, we're almost done, I think. The fine nuance between the two differs depending on the organization. A suppressing a fire means that a fire phenomenon has been returned to normal. The engine crew has brought the fire under control, so even if the fire has not completely disappeared, the fire can be said to be suppressed. In contrast, extinguishing a fire means the chief executive in charge of the scene has determined that no further firefighting from the engine crew is necessary. The chief executive in charge of the scene at Labo Fire was originally Watase, but since Kazami took over command in place after he lost his memory, the duty of determining a fire's extinguishment fell to her. Good, because she's the best. Except when she goes crazy. Transmitter. At the end of the 20th century, to relieve the new demand on wireless spectrums due to the boom of things like cellular phones and wireless LAN, the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications, now part of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, sought effective wireless spectrum usage from all enterprises. In October 2003, the Minister of Internal Affairs and Communications made a partial revision to radio law-related examination standards, and in July 2005, they posted a notice of an expansion and cooperation of fire and rescue radio systems and the promotion of joint fire captain activities. All fire radio systems were required to switch to digital by May 31st, 2016. Advantages to digital radio systems are heightened secrecy, the capability of sending images or other data, and the ability to share information not tied to jurisdiction by expanding wireless frequencies. On the other hand, digital radios have disadvantages of higher susceptibility to interference and around half the range of analog, necessitating the use of onboard or handheld relay stations. These two weak points have put the members of Sirius who rushed into Labo in a tough position. That makes sense, they switched from analog to digital. The Vital Checker, a piece of equipment in the shape of a wristband that allows for automatic inspection of the wearer's health. The device measures 4 of the wearer's vital signs: pulse rate, respiration rate, blood pressure, body temperature, and calculates a comprehensive fifth signal based off of those 4. The device is not distributed to the general public, but only to emergency teams and rescue workers who frequently race against time. The inspection is strictly for first aid purposes only, so follow-up treatments at a hospital is preferable. Okay. Oh god. Alright. The percentage of communicators in Rokume City's population is overwhelmingly higher than it is in other cities. Thus, a city ordinance prohibits untargeted telepathy in most situations. The only place not covered by the ordinance is Rokume Academy campus. Repeat offenders for the ordinance can very well be detained. Some seek a prohibition on the use of empathy as well, but for various reasons, including the scarcity of people who can actually use empathy and the imperceptibility of empathy usage by third parties, no precise regulation is in place, and it is left up to an honor system for empathy users. That said, the vast majority of non-Esper residents in Okume City choose to live there with full knowledge of what kind of city it is, so nearly nobody has actually been detained for the result of this ordinance. What do you got? PTSD? Post-traumatic stress disorder. If people don't have it yet, they're definitely going to after these events. It refers to the condition of stress disorders caused by the shock of a traumatic event. Often occurs when experiences of war, disaster, accidents, or abuse overwhelm the individual's ability to cope. Symptoms include flashbacks to a traumatic experience, recurring nightmares, emotional paralysis, insomnia, or other varying signs of emotional distress. Since the symptoms vary from individual to individual, there is no set treatment. Sufferers of PTSD need to be placed in an environment where they can rest, eat, and sleep, and have a doctor thoroughly evaluate their personal history to formulate a personalized plan. PTSD may also occur in individuals who have not directly experienced a disaster or an accident, but instead have simply witnessed such a calamity and feel an extreme sense of helplessness because of it. The thought of live and let die may seem cold at times. However, it may also help people realize that there are some things that only they can do, some things even they can do, and some things they can do nothing about. PDA, public display of affection. No? Okay. For a period of time, the miniaturization of notebook PCs had lost significant market share to the advancement of cell phone functionality, but the global spread of smartphones with PDA-like functionality revived interest. That said, there is essentially no boundary between PDA and smartphones nowadays. Some people might say that the PDA market was absorbed into the smartphone market and disappeared, but the newest marketing trend is to revive the term PDA after it has already largely lost familiarity with the young people. The perceived freshness of the word fans up consumer interest. The devices used by Watase and the others are special models provided to only serious members and are equipped with radio and thermography functions not normally given to PDAs on the market. So they're starting to be cool again, huh? Okay, radiation exposure, that's definitely a real thing. Refers to exposure of the human body to radiation. One of the basic classifications of radiation exposure is external or internal. External exposure occurs if the radiation is emitted from an outside source, while internal exposure occurs with the inhalation or ingestion of a radioactive material. The human body is unaffected by small doses of radiation, but large doses can have negative effects. In the case of systemic radiation exposure, the effects are said to be as followed. Okay, so what's that? 1 million? No, that's 10,000 millisieverts is 100% death rate. 4,000 to 50% death rate within 60 days. 3,000 is disturbance of consciousness. 1,000 is nausea and fatigue. 5,000 is temporary reduction in white blood cell count. 200 to 250 is no symptoms. 2.4 is the natural radiation dosage. And okay, 1,000 microsieverts equals 1 millisievert, which is 0.001 sieverts. Ugh, I finally got to say micro and it wasn't wrong. Radiation damage is said to cause cancer, leukemia, cataract, and infertility. But due to the impossibility of running radiation clinical trials with informed consent, not much about radiation damage is unclear. I was like, not much? Radiation damage can cause. Let me try this one more time before I lose my mind. Radiation can damage DNA, but cells are capable of automatic DNA repair. Thus, the general opinion of scientists today is that unless the dosage of radiation is high and happens all at once, the risks of DNA damage can be suppressed. It's important to know both the risks of radiation damage and to proceed with appropriate caution. I don't know why that one broke me mentally. Bayo Bayo, okay. Futuristic or psychic girl beyond. An animated series broadcast by NDK, Nippon Denpa Kyokai, from July to September 2019, based on a radio drama of the same name, 13 episodes. Fans affectionately call it Bayo Bayo. Kirara, a simple elementary school girl, meets a mysterious stuffed animal named Yeti and awakens to her psychic powers to become Psychic Girl Beyond Kanmi, a magical girl, so to speak, who protects the townspeople from a dark secret society. For some reason, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology is listed as part of the production committee in the credits. It aired in an ideal time slot of 6:30 to 7 p.m., helping again a huge following of not just its target audience of female elementary school children, but also their parents, and even adult male anime fans with interest in the overwhelming movie quality animation and direction. As a result, the character Kirara was so universally beloved, it was dubbed Japan's little sister. Also of note is that the scenario writer for the series had only written 2 series in total before disappearing from the anime industry, perhaps pulling out of a fully fulfilled creative urge. Okay, so this is episode 1 commentary? If only I had psychic powers, I'd bring smiles to all their faces. Inspired by a program on psychic powers they saw on TV, Kirara and her classmates tried their hardest to bend spoons with their minds at school. At that moment, Kirara's pure wish becomes a psychic power, and everyone's spoons start to bend one by one. Everyone's spoons except for Kirara's, that is. That it was because her wish was to bring smiles to their faces and not her own. This purpose of the scene is to foreshadow Kirara's top-class psychic powers, but also paints a picture of the pure kindness in her spirit. Oh, it must be from the official guidebook. If only you could use psychic powers, you'd be able to bring smiles to everyone's faces. Mashido mused as he smiled at Natsuhiko. The nonchalant remark probably meant if Natsuhiko was able to use BC, I'm sure he'd use his powers for good. But if there ever comes a time where he ought to use his power for himself, he might hesitate to do so. When such a time comes, maybe I'll give him a little push from behind. A sentiment filled with Mashido's pure kindness and consideration. Probably. Okay, Beyonder. An original animated TV series broadcast on NDK from July to September 2019. 13 episodes. The series depicts a boy gifted with the rare ability of ESP who becomes a Beyonder, the pilot of a robot driven by human thought, and follows his coming-of-age journey as he meets and battles many rivals with abilities similar to his own. For some reason, the Ministry of Education, they're in this again, aren't they? They're listed as a production committee in the credits. Multimedia marketing effort was successful with its collectible card-reading arcade game, figure sets, and comic versions released alongside the show's airing, creating a big sensation centered on the male elementary school demographic. So they targeted male and female elementary kids. Okay. Also note that the scenario writer for the series had only written 2 series in total before disappearing, so he or she wrote both and then bounced out, huh? Fireman's carry, a technique for carrying someone by standing opposite to them, putting your head underneath their armpit, and supporting them up on your shoulders. It is often seen in armed forces, but was used especially by firefighters to carry injured, hence the name. When lifting the other person, the fireman's carry uses the strongest muscle in the body, the quadriceps, thus allowing for speedy evacuation. However, the cases where fireman's carry can be used are limited by how it places the carried person's head up high, exposing them to smoke and other dangers. Similar derivative techniques are used in all sorts of martial arts, like the kataguruma in judo and the backflip in pro wrestling. In Sayu's personal Sannomiya style savate, there's the Sannomiya spiral that begins with a similar stance to slam the other person down into the ground backwards, striking the crown of their head. What did I just read? She has her own martial arts style? Okay, placebo, a false medicine with no active ingredients, often used in clinical trials to verify the efficacy of a real drug by comparison and contrast. The placebo effect is what happens when somebody takes a placebo under the impression that it is a real drug, but their symptoms improve regardless. In simple terms, the improvement is just their imagination. However, it is true that from ancient times, Japan has had adages like health starts with the mind and sickness is mind over matter. If the sense of security you get from taking a medicine is what gives you a positive attitude, and that attitude in turn lets you overcome the sickness, does it matter if the medicine is real or not? Brain Cell! Supercomputer made in Japan that manages all of Labo's information, including experimental data, security, electricity, and other infrastructure. It is installed in the outer ring of Labo and is only accessible from Area 4. Aside from the backup data it sends to the surface, Brain Cell is standalone, is not connected to the internet. The 3 control systems, Solodone, Dew, and Tria, perform constant mutual surveillance on each other, thus it is impervious to direct cracking and unauthorized access. Brain Cell is currently ranked the #1 fastest computer system in the world by twice-yearly ranking organization Project Top 500. Oh god, there's still so much. It's okay though. We're getting there. Radiation again? Alright. General term referring to alpha rays, beta rays, and gamma rays, neutron rays, and other particle beams in the electromagnetic waves. Radioactive materials have unstable structures and thus decay over time. Radiation is the emission of energy or particles after such decay. Examples of radiation include alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, and neutron rays, each with their own degrees of penetrating power and effects on the human body. In terms of penetrating power, gamma is greater than neutron, which is greater than beta, which is greater than alpha. Alpha rays can be stopped with a thin sheet of paper, thus there is no need for fear of alpha radiation exposure as long as it's not internal. In contrast, beta rays are stopped by things such as aluminum, neutron rays by water, boron and carbon, gamma rays require steel or lead, and thus the difficulty of radiation shielding varies greatly between these types. In terms of harm to human bodies, alpha, neutron, beta, gamma. Neutron rays rank highly dangerous in both categories. The neutron bomb uses a neutron radiation, which is why sci-fi writers often prefix the names of fictional weapons with the word neutron. Radioactive material decays at a fixed probability over a given length of time. Thus, the time it takes for a particular proportion of a given material to decay is approximately constant. The length of time it takes for half the material to decay is called the material's half-life. Half of the radioactive material decaying means the material's danger to humans has been reduced to a half. Thus, the half-life of a radioactive material is one criterion in deciding how to handle it. For example, iodine, I-131, has a half-life of approximately 8 days. Cesium-137 has a half-life of approximately 30 years. Some nuclides don't reach their half-life for thousands or millions of years. Also, it's incorrect to assume that since half of iodine-131 decays in 8 days, that all of it decays in 16 days. At 8 days you have half, at 16 days you have a quarter, at 24 days you have an eighth, and so on. The decay is exponential, and thus it takes an extraordinary amount of time for the emission of radiation to stop completely. Whatever unnatural radioactive materials are involved, it is wise to measure radiation dosage and plan appropriately for radiation exposure. Okay. What do we got now? Radiation measuring instrument. Okay, since human senses cannot detect radiation, we need dedicated radiation measuring instruments to properly plan for safe precautions in radioactive environments. Such handheld devices are called survey meters and are generally known as Geiger counters. However, Geiger counter is not the general term for these devices, but rather refers specifically to those that use Geiger-Müller tubes. Aside from GM tubes, other survey meters use scintillators or ionization chambers. As the name suggests, Geiger counter counts the number of radiation events. However, since it only counts the number and not the strength of the events, it cannot measure the amount of radiation energy, and tends to overestimate the actual radiation dosage to account for measurement error. The Geiger counter is relatively cheap and aimed at personal ownership. A scintillation counter measures radiation energy based on the pulses of visible light released by a scintillator in response to radiation. An ionization chamber survey meter calculates radiation dosage by the amount of ions generated from radiation passing through a hermetically sealed containers of gas. Okay, nuclear power facilitates and monitoring posts at every prefecture measure radiation dosage periodically, even outside of crises. Almost all such facilities use scintillation or ionization chamber measuring instruments. You get all that? It's like slowly seeping into my brain, but at the same time, I wonder if I'm actually retaining any or all of it. Okay, so this is fiction. It's the radiation inhibitor drug, Alone Desire, or AD for short. Did they ever say that's what it stood for? I don't remember. Okay. An anti-radiation exposure drug developed by pharmaceutical company Betelgeuse New Treatments and packaged in ampules. It contains medical nanomachines which, when administered, neutralize and expel up to 4,000 millisieverts per hour of radiation, protecting the user from internal and external exposure. The effects last approximately 60 minutes. The drug was approved in 2021, but still has not been distributed due to the general public. However, starting with Labo Locume City, nuclear power research institutes are allowed to use it experimentally. Nuclear power may indeed be useful, but the bottleneck is its implementation is definitely the fear of radiation exposure. If only nuclear fission could be used to its fullest extent without the fear of radiation. Up until now, that thought had not been a reality, but merely a desire alone. Hence the name Alone Desire. Sure, however, AD is slowly making that desire a reality. Dispelling the fear of accumulated radiation exposure also ties to the training of veteran nuclear engineers through increased safety nets. Thus, much is expected from this drug in the future. I wonder if it's got something going on with the story, right? Special protective clothing used when working in environments at risk for radiation. Formal name, radiation protection firefighting suit. There are two types, one that emphasizes the prevention of internal exposure by absorption, and one that focuses on shielding from radiation. The former doesn't fully protect you from external radiation, so you need to have a dosimeter handy and pay attention to radiation exposure at all times. The latter uses lead or other dense materials to shield from radiation and is thus quite heavy. Thus, careful consideration must be used to choose the best suit for the job. Some protection suits have an inner and outer layer with both sets of properties. Both sorts of suits are weak against water, so that when there's a danger of getting wet, a protective hooded anorak suit is worn on top of the protection suit. The protection suit used by Sirius are prepared with the assumption that they will be used in a nuclear disaster, and thus have both aforementioned properties as well as fire resistance, water resistance, and secrecy. How nice. Okay, radioactivity. Refers to how unstable radioactive material emits radiation as it decays and gains a more stable nuclei. It is somewhat like a measure of the material's capability to emit radiation. Today in Japan, in terms of radioactivity, radioactive material, and radiation often get confused, and heeding that confusion, the media, some specialists often lump them all as radioactivity, but strictly speaking, these terms refer to different concepts. Using a flower as a metaphor, the difference is as follows. The flower is the radioactive material, the scent is the radiation, and the capability to give off a scent is its radioactivity. That's actually a nice little example. Okay. Step voltage shock. The same way that water flows from high heights to low heights, electricity flows from high voltage to low voltage. A step voltage shock happens when a voltage difference between 2 points about a meter apart, the size of a human step, causes electricity to flow. This is the reason why when lightning strikes, electricity can move through the ground to shock someone nearby. Conversely, if there is no voltage difference between the 2 points, no electricity will flow and therefore no shock. If Watase snapped his feet together and stood perpendicularly, he could potentially avoid a shock. But then again, that posture would not allow for him to clear the electrified puddle of water and lava. Also of note is that step voltage can explain why birds can safely perch on power lines. Both of their tiny feet contact the same power line. If they regularly stepped on two different lines, then some streets would be rife with fried chicken. I have heard that. I have heard that, like, if you cross the lines, like, you would get electrocuted, but if you stay on one, then you're okay. Millie Seavelt. Oh, of course. There are 3 indispensable units when dealing with radiation exposure. Oh god. Becquerels, grays, and sievelts. The BQ measures the amount of radiation a radioactive material releases in a second. The GY measures how much radiation energy a particular object absorbs per kilogram when exposed to radiation. The SV and GY are both units that describe radiation absorption, whereas the GY measures absorbed dose. The SV measures equivalent dose, which accounts for how much harm the radiation harms the human body. SV measurements are typically given in microsievelts. MSV, millisievelts, and SV, sievelts are rarely used. In the same way that a body heights are typically given in centimeters and body weights in kilograms, the need to use MSV or SV instead of microsievelts says something of the abnormality of the situation. You wouldn't expect someone to be 100 meters tall or weigh 2,000 kilograms. Millisievelts per hour denotes radiation dose over the span of an hour. And now you know. Okay, a meltdown. That's what I'm about to have at the end of this episode. Also known as a nuclear reactor core meltdown. Refers to when nuclear fuel melts into the base of its pressure vessel container due to errors like cooling system failure. When handled promptly, the radioactive material is at risk of spreading outside, causing an extremely serious nuclear disaster. A worse situation is a melt-through, when nuclear fuel penetrates beyond the pressure level container and through the subsequent barriers. Even worse is a melt-out, where the nuclear fuel breaks through the entire reactor and leaks into the ground. Furthermore, meltdowns are not limited to just nuclear reactor cores. Pools of spent fuel also hide the risk of a meltdown if not properly cooled. Great. The ghost was just withered grass? Okay, the frightening ghost upon closer inspection was just withered grass. A saying based on a haiku written by a Genroku era poet, Yokoi Yayu, in his Haibun anthology, Uzura Koromo. Okay? The haiku means that even strange, unusual things become significant once you learn the truth behind them. However, there is no haiku written by Yayu said to be closer to the bakemono, which is like a monster, upon closer inspection was withered grass. And over time, bakemono was changed to frightening ghosts. Ghosts, monsters, and the like are often seen in books, folklore, and myths, but ghost stories were particularly popular in the Edo period, where the so-called three great ghost stories of Japan were born in succession: Yotsuya Kaidan, Sarayashiki, and Botan Doro. The change from bakemono to ghost may have originated around this time. A phrase similar with the meaning suspicion begets monsters. There's also the comic haiku in the rakugo storytelling. I readied my sword, but upon closer inspection, 'twas a willow tree. The theme can be seen in other literary works as well. It is the fearful human heart that creates the unknown. Okay, survivor? People found alive in need of rescuing during the incident who cannot by their own power evacuate from the danger that threatens to kill or otherwise harm them. Those involved in rescue efforts, be they firefighters, rescue workers, or other individuals, are trained to treat survivors like family. But on the scene, these workers must leave their real family behind. So in that regard, survivors are temporarily more important than family. Interesting to know. Okay, let's go back 13.7 billion years. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. In the middle of nothing, there is an unprecedented explosive expansion. This is the birth of the universe according to the Big Bang Theory. In the beginning of the universe, in its state of extreme heat and pressure, there was only one fundamental force, but that force differentiated into four. The force of gravity, also known as the law of universal gravitation, the strong force that binds elementary particles known as quarks, the weak force that causes atomic nuclei to emit beta radiation during beta decay, and the electromagnetic force that works on electrically charged particles. These four fundamental forces, also known as the four fundamental interactions and mediated by four fundamental fields, has been used to describe the interaction observed in the known universe. However, Miyoko Tenkawa proposed a fifth fundamental force in her informational field hypothesis, thus making waves in the world of physics as we know it. We're almost done, I swear, I promise. Alright, rescue squad. In a fire department, the elite team that actively saves lives is called a rescue squad. A rescue squad is defined by Rescue Squad Formation, Equipment, and Stationing Standards Ordinance of Ministry of Home Affairs number 22 of 1986, which also calls for the classification of rescue squad and special rescue squad based on the number of squad members and rescue equipment at hand. However, some cities were unsatisfied with those classifications and organized their own high-level rescue squads in order to save as many people as possible. For example, the Tokyo Fire Department has Hyper Rescue and Kyoto Fire Department has Super Command Rescue. Hyper Rescue did especially remarkable work after the 2004 Niigata Chuetsu earthquake, and thus Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications revised the aforementioned ordinance in 2006. Above the classification of Special Rescue Squad, Elite Rescue Squad and Special Elite Rescue Squad were established. Good God. Providing nationwide rescue preparedness in the face of disasters. Elite rescue squads are deployed in large-scale disasters and are often called Super Rescue, while Special Elite Rescue Squads are deployed in even more serious NBC disasters and tend to be called Hyper Rescue. The Rokume City Fire Department Special Elite Rescue Squad Serious is at the highest level. What did I just read? Okay, Rokume Science City. One of the cities chosen as the government-designated top secret cities with the 2016 BC law. Under the pretext of protecting the secrecy of the BC research, a now national affair, several restrictions were put in place. A tall fence was erected around the city's perimeter with city gates and inspection stations. Moving inside or outside the city would now require permission from the government. Surveillance cameras were installed throughout the town, and all phone calls, correspondence, and mail would be strictly filtered. Kind of intense. In return, utilities and medical facilities were enriched, certain tax exemptions were made, and public order became extremely favorable for both individuals and enterprises. It was as if the city had become a cradle for citizens as long as they consented to the rules. The total population is roughly 180,000, roughly 2% or 0.2%, or 360 of them being communicators demonstrating ability level 1 or higher, and 0.5% or 900 of them having rank E aptitude or higher. In 2030, the world population is at 8.3 billion, with an official estimate of 0.002%, or 166,000 of them being communicators. Thus, Rokumei City's communicator percentage is 100 times that of the world. Japan as a whole has a percentage twice of that of the world, 4,800 ability level 1 Japanese residents out of a population of 120 million. It is still unclear why so many communicators are born in Japan. I'm sure we'll find out why soon. Did I do the academy? No, I didn't. Okay. As Rokumei is stated to be an academic research city, it has an abundance of educational institutions. The most characteristic of the city is the communicator-exclusive Rokumei Academy. The lessons and curriculum here are tailored to include BC history and the individual development of BC abilities. Thus, students with higher ability levels are given more benefits such as scholarships. Okay. Rokumei Academy has integrated elementary and middle and high school campuses with roughly 300 elementary students, 150 middle school students, and 90 high school students. Considering how the grand communicator discovery that sparked the boom of communicator burst was only 16 years ago, the high school students are said to be the forerunners of the future BC society. As the premier school that gets on the honor of carrying the city's name, the study environment is extremely satisfactory, including the generous distribution of teaching materials such as 7-inch tablets for every student. Wow, how generous. Last one, and I'm done. Lake Rokumei, a wide lake on the southeastern side of Rokumei City. In addition to being used for Rokumei City's water services, agriculture, irrigation, and industrial water source, it is also used as a coolant for the heavy machinery in Labo's Area N. The water brought into Labo through the intake pipe heats up to around 25 degrees Celsius before being expelled through the drainage pipe back into Lake Rokumei. Though the water is over 50 degrees at the time of drainage, Lake Rokumei is a acidotropic lake with a low pH and thus does not have much wildlife to begin with, so the hot water has a negligible effect on the ecosystem. There we go. I did it. I think I've read all of the ones that were new. Clearly there are a bunch, but what we'll do next time, or from this point on, is we'll read them as we encounter them. I'm going to go take a break, and I'm going to get a drink and just chill for a little bit. But thank you guys if you made it to the end of this video. I really do appreciate it. And now we're going to go into the before scenario with our brains exploding from all this knowledge. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next MAMJ. Lots of fun.